Chapter 2174. Mo Lien and the rest looked at the snake sympathetically. The little fellow was quick to react and ruthless. She pried open the snake's mouth and gave it a warning glare. "Don't move, don't move. Everyone, dot." In the blink of an eye, Miss Chow forcefully pulled out the two venomous fangs from the snake's mouth. It hurt so much. Everyone looked at the snake's contorted expression and sincerely shed tears of sympathy for it. Xiao Mu tossed away that blue snakelet. The little snake whimpered and wriggled its body, trying to escape. Arbor stepped on its tail. "Everyone, dot. Little fellow, you're too much." Arbor put the two venomous fangs into a small crystal bottle. After putting away the bottle, he squatted down and lifted the snake up. The snake was helpless. Its head tilted up slightly, and its eyes were filled with pitiful tears. It's crying." Fairy Ginkgo exclaimed as if she had discovered a new continent. How could it not cry? Everyone looked at the cowardly little blue snake with great sympathy. "What are you crying for?" The little fellow slapped the snake's head and pried open its mouth again, sprinkling 2 drops of medicinal liquid into it. "It'll grow back in a month." "What a stupid snake, crying. Your 2 venomous fangs aren't growing well. Otherwise, how could they be pulled out so easily? Now that I've removed them before they're completely crooked, the ones that grow back in the future will be much sturdier than this." "Pig!" Arbor scolded the little snake to himself and threw it into the soil. Scram! The little blue snake, who had its fangs pulled out and was scolded as a pig, felt that it had never felt so wronged in its life. So wronged. It wriggled its slender little tail and was about to hurriedly burrow back into the soil when it suddenly saw Arbor take out a bottle of medicinal liquid from his sleeve and feed it to the big white snake on his wrist. What a sweet smell! The little blue snake paused and suddenly slithered towards Xiao Mu's feet with a rustle. Everyone thought, "You're courting death." The little blue snake slithered to Arbor's feet and suddenly collapsed on the ground in a very human-like manner. Then, its belly flipped, and it actually rolled towards the sky like a fish. It stuck out its belly and had a "please feed me" expression on its face. Everyone was speechless. Arbor glanced at it and said expressionlessly, "You can eat it if you want. In the future, I will offer a drop of venom essence every 3 months." The corner of Ma Shichen's mouth twitched as she stole a glance at Mo Lien, who was standing beside her. He dared to bet his head with Mo Lien that the little fellow was definitely doing this on purpose. This little blue snake was definitely not an ordinary creature. Unfortunately, he was caught by Chow Chow today, even though he had been living in this poison valley for so many years. This is a blue spirit snake emperor. Arbor picked up the little blue snake, who was willing to sell himself because of his gluttony, and expressionlessly threw him back to the 100 Poison Valley on Paradise Planet. Although it is only a little snake at the peak of spiritual beast level, its venom is the most poisonous in the world. A drop of poison essence every 3 months was more than enough for her. The blue spirit snake emperor's venom was very malleable and could be made into all kinds of poisons. In the future, this venom would be very effective against great spiritual masters above level 10. Arbor turned around and looked at everyone. "What's with your expressions?" "And nothing." Fairy Ginkgo mumbled and closed her mouth. She secretly thought that the little blue snake was a little pitiful. Chapter 2175. Look, even after selling herself, she's still happily counting money for her master. Arbor glanced at them. Although no one said anything, their eyes were full of drama. Humph. Miss Chow turned her head and continued walking forward. Everyone followed the thin and long path filled with thick fog. After walking for about half an hour, they saw a bright light in front of them. A row of bamboo houses was hidden in the fog. Looking at it, it was as if they were in a fairyland, the fog lingering around. Arbor blinked and looked up at Mo Lien. Don't you feel that the way in has been very smooth? Mo Lien nodded. It's fine. Since the other party opened the door and let us in, let's see how capable this Madame Fong is. Arbor was naturally not afraid. Since Madame Fong dared to capture Dun Zong, she had to be prepared to be uprooted. Moreover, she was also somewhat curious about Madame Feng's background. What kind of status did she have in the Tianyun organization? Hall Master? Or even higher? Arbor glanced over indifferently. He took out 2 small medicine bottles from his inner world and handed them to the Ginkgo fairy and the Peony fairy. Apply this on your exposed skin. I guarantee that no poisonous insects will dare to approach you. Weren't they tired of keeping the defensive barrier open all day long? Keeping the barrier open also consumed spiritual energy. Oh no, they were consuming sacred energy, okay. The 2 hurriedly took the medicine and removed the barrier after applying it. They looked around and saw that no poisonous creatures dared to approach them. Only then did they relax. Everyone walked towards the entrance of the bamboo house. At the same time, Dun Zong, who was tied to an interrogation pillar, was cursing at Madame Fong. Stop dreaming. A warrior prefers death to humiliation. I won't tell you who I am even if I die. It was really like a tiger being bullied by dogs. To think that he, a dignified venerable realm cultivator, was forced to be suppressed in Gung Pengcheng's small spirit realm body. Woo that he wanted to regain his previous cultivation and had to continue cultivating. The problem was that he needed time to train. Although he was already training as hard as he could, Gung Pengcheng's body was limited. The more he thought about it, the more pitiful he felt. He wanted to cry. Madame Feng's face darkened as she stood in front of Dunju. Seeing that he was about to cry again, she couldn't help but raise her hand and slap his face. Shut up. You fierce woman. Bring me a whip. Wow. Don't hit me, don't hit me. Ah. The moment the whip came down, the stalks let out a heart-wrenching cry and a heart-rending scream. Shut up. Madame Fong scolded angrily. Her face was slightly distorted. At this moment, the door of Nethery's room was pushed open. A woman who looked like a maid hurried over with her head lowered. She whispered to Madame Fong, Madam, Hall Master Gong is here. Madame Fong frowned slightly. She handed the whip in her hand to the maidservant and said, Continue. Yes. She turned around and walked out. Miserable screams rose again. As the door of Nethery's room slammed shut, Madame Fong raised her hand and rubbed the space between her eyebrows. Everything had been going wrong recently. After her stubborn disciple, Huang He, discovered her biggest secret, she wanted to get rid of Huang He but failed. What happened next was even more dramatic. She actually discovered that her husband seemed to have been replaced by someone else. This Gung Pengcheng, in front of her, was completely different from her husband in terms of temperament and behavior. Chapter 2176. Although he usually covered it up very well and could clearly describe many of the past events between them, he naturally couldn't match the small details. 2 days ago, Madame Fong was completely certain that the Gung Pengcheng in front of her had definitely been swapped. However, that person's skills were very good. The appearance did not change, but the heart was different. In other words, the original Gung Pengcheng's soul had probably dissipated long ago, and his spiritual consciousness had been destroyed. Although this man had never loved her from the beginning to the end, they had been husband and wife for so many years. It would be a lie to say that she did not regret it. If it were not for Gung Pengcheng, she would not have joined the organization and undergone such a drastic change. From a cripple in the past, she had become a person with special abilities. Her life had completely changed. Although Gung Pengcheng usually treated her with respect, as a husband, he had performed quite well. When they were outside, he gave her enough face as his wife. In the manner, he also never allowed those concubines to suppress her. After decades of being together, he left just like that. It would be a lie to say that she did not regret it. After old Gung left, Madame Fong felt as if a knife had been twisted in her heart for the past few days, that it turned out that there were many things that she did not know when she was together. Only when she lost him would she know that the other party was not that unimportant to her. It did not matter that her husband did not love her. At least he was still with her. But now, there was nothing left. Madame Fong clenched her fists tightly and quickly walked into the hall. The hall was very dark and secluded. On the four walls, there were wooden decorations such as ox-headed and horse-faced malicious ghosts hanging. Each of them was described as terrifying. A tall and slightly thin young man was standing in the hall with his back facing her. He slowly turned his head. His face was covered with a ghost mask, and his scarlet ghost eyes were staring at her. Madame Feng's heart skipped a beat. She quickly bowed and respectfully called out, "Hall Master Gong." A low and hoarse roar came from behind Hall Master Gong. A figure suddenly appeared beside her like lightning and reached out to grab her neck. Madame Fong was shocked. She only felt that the hand that grabbed her seemed to be very strong. She forced herself to raise her neck and look at the person who came. She saw a woman with a slightly ashen face and veins on her face. She was bared her teeth and glared at her fiercely. That face was not the face of a normal human. The woman's hair had been shaved clean, and her bald head was covered with ferocious veins. A left hand was gripping her neck, and the strength was so great that she couldn't move at all. "Chief Gong," Madame Fong said with difficulty. "Ollie," the man called out faintly. The bald woman named Li suddenly threw Madame Fong away. Madame Fong was sent flying back more than a meter before falling heavily to the ground. She lay on the ground and gasped for air. Hiding the fear in her eyes, she raised her head with difficulty and glanced at Hall Master Gong. She quickly lowered her head and said respectfully, "Hall Master, please spare my life. Hall Master, please spare my life. Fong Lan." Hall Master Gong looked at her coldly and said, "Do you know where you went wrong?" Madame Fong lowered her head and didn't even dare to breathe loudly. "You've greatly disappointed the Lord." Hall Master Gong sneered. "Your impatience has ruined the Lord's plans. Now that those people have found their way here, what are you going to do?" A cold and bloody smile appeared on Fong Lan's face. Chapter 2177. Kill them and make sure they don't return. With just you. Humiliation flashed through Fong Lan's eyes. She raised her head and said with a twisted expression, "Of course, it's not just me. There are also the 100,000 mystic cultivators under my command. Your subordinates." Yes, Master's subordinates. Master didn't have you nurture these people for you to squander as you wish. Fong Lan silently lowered her head. Everyone thought that Gung Pengcheng had a very powerful private army under his command, but they didn't know that this private army was actually collected and nurtured by her master. They directly obeyed her master, but she had the authority to mobilize them. Now but Hall Master Gong said she couldn't abuse this authority to mobilize troops. Fong Lan was naturally unconvinced. If she didn't mobilize these troops, how could she deal with those people from Arbor? How could she avenge her husband? At this moment, she didn't know that Gung Pengcheng's original body had died in Arbor's hands. She only vaguely felt that this matter probably had something to do with that stoic-faced little girl. But now, Hall Master Gong actually issued such an order. Fong Lan, it's best if you don't act on your own, Hall Master Gong said to her coldly. Hand over the transfer order for the Shantian guards. Madame Ne Fong silently clenched her fists. Unexpectedly, she heard an inhuman roar coming from behind Hall Master Gong. Madame Ne Feng's heart tightened. She looked up at the bald woman standing a few steps behind Hall Master Gong, her palms sweating. This woman's strange appearance made her wonder who she was. Madame Ne Fong broke out in cold sweat and thought, she doesn't look human, but her appearance is infinitely close to a human's. Could it be? Madame Ne Feng's eyes almost completely lit up. Hall Master, could it be? It's a perfect zombie. Pfft, Hall Master Gong sneered coldly. Do you think her appearance is perfect? This was far from a perfect zombie, okay? Her evolution failed. She's now a rank 1 special grade zombie. Hall Master Gong swept a glance at the bald woman and said coldly, she can't even advance to rank 2. Such good resources spent on her have been wasted. The bald woman lowered her head in defeat. This expression. This greatly surprised Madame Fong. She hurriedly said, Hall Master, has she completely awakened her spiritual intelligence? Of course, Hall Master Gong said coldly. This rank 1 special zombie puppet possessed the memories of its human predecessor. Not only had she fully awakened her intelligence, she was basically no different from a human. However, Hall Master Gong frowned as he looked at the bald woman's appearance. He shook his head and said, a failed product is ultimately a failed product. If he advanced to the second stage, the veins on his skin should recede, and his appearance would be no different from that of an ordinary person. But now, the bald woman would definitely give people the impression that she was not one of them at first glance. Unfortunately, he was only one small step away. Hall Master Gong sighed and gestured for the bald woman to take a few steps back. He walked over to Madame Fong, raised his hand, and said coldly, hand it over. The transfer order of the Shantian Sentinels was a private army that she had painstakingly cultivated for so many years. Madame Fong gritted her teeth and took out a transfer order from her inner world with trembling hands. She bowed and handed it to Hall Master Gong. Hall Master, Madame Fong called out submissively. I will bring these people away. Hall Master Gong swept a glance at Madame Fong. Chapter 2178. I'll give you one last piece of advice. There are some enmity that you can't avenge. You can still survive if you leave as soon as possible. Now isn't the best time to clash head-on with Arbor's group. His lord has ordered not to clash head-on with them. Why? Fong Lan raised her head and questioned loudly. She could sense that Hall Master Gong's aura had also sunk slightly, as if he was very unhappy. Fong Lan, pay attention to your status. Weigh clearly what you should and shouldn't ask. Hall Master Gong coldly glanced at her and turned to leave with a flick of his sleeve. Suddenly, a female attendant hurriedly ran in and hastily saluted Hall Master Gong and Fong Lan. Madam, it's bad. That Miss Chiao has led a group of people into our valley. Now that they've entered the bamboo hut and discovered that there was no one there, they're looting our supplies. Fong Lan clenched her fists and glared at Hall Master Gong, who was watching coldly from the sidelines. Hall Master, that girl is so arrogant and despotic. Why do we have to tolerate her so much? This is an order from above. Just do as you're told. Hall Master Gong turned around and walked 3 steps before coldly glancing at the bald woman beside him. Ollie, why aren't you leaving? That bald woman called Ollie was like a mechanical puppet. She desperately wanted to turn around and leave with the Hall Master, but her body seemed to be out of her control and didn't move at all. Hall Master Gong sneered, a defective product is a defective product. You can't control your body again. Take her away. The two subordinates following behind him immediately walked forward and lifted Ollie from both sides. They directly carried her away as if she was a clay sculpture. This was completely the posture of moving goods. The bald woman was already sane, so this posture caused a great sense of shame to rise in her heart. Hall Master Gong. Fong Lan couldn't resist raising her voice and called out to the Hall Master wearing a ghost mask. Don't tell me we're abandoning this base. What else? Hall Master Gong coldly glanced at Fong Lan. If you didn't act rashly and alert the enemy in your eagerness for instant success and startle that girl, would we have completely retreated now? Fong Lan couldn't resist grinding her teeth. I don't understand. With his lord's power, couldn't he just kill that little stoic? She's just a little girl from the lower star region. Could it be that Arbor has some unknown identity? Hall Master Gong coldly glanced at Fong Lan. Don't act on your own. I'm warning you for the last time, no. Yes. Of course. How pretentious. Lord Zhang. Hall Master Gong said coldly. When Hall Master Gong finished speaking and turned around, he suddenly heard a violent roar from the side. His expression changed and he turned his head away. Suddenly, the bald woman seemed to have gone mad. She actually dashed towards the female attendant. Ah! The female attendant let out a cry of alarm. She was suddenly knocked backwards by her and fell to the ground with a bang. Hall Master Gong angrily shouted, Ali. However, the bald woman didn't listen to his command at all. She roared and ran outside. Fong Lan was startled for a moment, then her face lit up with joy. This special-grade corpse puppet had already developed intelligence, and it even had the memories of a human when it was alive. She went crazy when she heard Arbor's name, so it looked like she definitely had an irreconcilable grudge with this little stoic. Roar, roar, roar. The bald female corpse puppet called Ollie grimaced in pain and dashed out madly without a care. It was too late for Hall Master Gong to send people to intercept her. Chapter 2179. Damn it. Hall Master Gong shouts angrily and turns his head to look at the two subordinates who were carrying the bald woman. Are you all dead? Why aren't you going to stop her? The two subordinates complain incessantly in their hearts. This rank 1 special class zombie has boundless strength and incomparably fast speed. It really isn't something that two little spirit masters can deal with. They don't know what's wrong with this fellow. It suddenly goes crazy and makes people unable to guard against it. Although they are constantly cursing in their hearts, the two of them don't dare to say anything. Since it's the Hall Master's order, they quickly follow and prepare to stop the bald woman. However, when they rush out, they can't find any trace of the bald woman. That bald woman's speed is much faster than theirs. In the time it takes to say a few words, she has already flown off to God knows where. Meanwhile, Chow Mu and the others had ransacked that row of bamboo houses from top to bottom, inside and out. With the mentality of not wasting anything that can be used, everyone puts everything they see into their inner worlds. The Peony Fairy even says in a deadpan manner, I didn't expect that our trip to this small valley would actually have some gains. This is really unexpected. There are a lot of spirit stones piled up in this bamboo house. He Chin and the others don't need them, so Arbor takes them all. In the end, looking at some sturdy wooden tables and chairs in the bamboo house, Arbor thinks that when there are more people in the future, he will build his own small house on Paradise Planet. His family will also need these things, so he puts them all in one go. Everyone looks at her as if they are looking at a god. Wherever this little fellow passed by, not a single strand of hair was left behind. After sweeping through this row of bamboo houses, everyone has some gains. For example, Ginkgo Fairy and the others took a batch of pretty good medicinal pills. Arbor doesn't really need these medicinal pills and the like. If she wants them, she can just refine them herself. Another example is that some of the spirit tools stored in the bamboo house were taken away by Dao Wuji. This brat plans to listen to little sister-in-law's words. In the future, when he fights, he won't waste his strength if he can get spirit tools to explode. When everyone comes out of the bamboo house, they all have a lot of gains. Just as they are about to continue walking inside, they suddenly hear a low and hoarse roar. Roar, roar, roar. Xiao Mu abruptly turned her head, and the first thing she saw was a large bald head with countless veins protruding from it. So ugly. Xiao Mu creased her brows and decisively swept her palm across. The wood spiritual energy that he pushed out endlessly pressed forward and heavily struck the bald woman's face that was pouncing towards him. Pang! The bald woman dodged as fast as lightning. Arbor's attack missed and smashed into the ground behind the bald woman. The broken gravel immediately splashed out, and some dust flew in front of their eyes. Everyone subconsciously narrowed their eyes. Roar! Roar! The bald woman stared straight at Arbor. Her purplish-red lips wriggled, and she shouted hoarsely and strenuously, "Joe! Wood!" Her voice was very strange. It sounded like a human, but it wasn't. It took her a lot of effort to say the two simple words, Arbor. Arbor looked at her coldly and sized her up. He frowned and said, "Corpse puppet? What?" Dao Wuji looked over in shock. When he saw her just now, he thought that this bald woman was just a little ugly. He didn't expect that Jojo would call her a corpse puppet. Broken Dreams. Chapter 2180. Mo Lian also furrowed her brows. It did appear to be a zombie, and it was a zombie in a complete human form. Her appearance was not good-looking, and her expression was slightly stiff. But compared to those crooked and rotting zombies in the past, this one was clearly very outstanding. However, why did this human-shaped zombie suddenly dash out from behind the bamboo house and attack Jojo without any explanation? She seemed to know Jojo and even called out her name. But it was clear that the husband and wife did not know who this bald woman was. The peony fairy blocked the attack and turned back to shout, "Hey, Jojo, this zombie seems to be coming for you." Arbor nodded. She could naturally tell that this human-shaped zombie had clearly called out her name just now. Moreover, the hatred in this bald woman's eyes was very bone-piercing. The bald woman hated her. But she had no recollection of it at all. She did not even know when she had interacted with this bald woman. Roar, roar. The bald woman clenched her fists tightly. Her finger bones appeared very thick, and her hands were 2 to 3 times larger than normal women's hands. Upon closer inspection, one would discover that her hands were covered in a thick layer of calluses that were many times thicker than other people's hands. Although her body no longer rotted after the mutation, she was still so ugly. Jojo! Moo! The bald woman shouted menacingly and abruptly dashed toward Arbor. She swung out her arms, which abruptly turned into slender noodles, and slapped at Arbor's head. Seeing this, Mo Lian promptly threw out a purple flame and hugged Arbor to the side. "Wife, don't be scared, don't be scared." Mo Lian calmly rubbed the little fellow's chest. "Hubby is here." Arbor? Jojo was not scared at all, okay? Hubby was taking advantage of her, right? Chiao. Moo. The bald woman's resentful voice rang out again, and her scarlet eyes stared fixedly at Arbor and Mo Lian. "Kill. Kill. You." The bald woman spat out these 3 words with great effort. Her 2 long arms swung in the air and attacked in the direction of Arbor again. Squawk. The bald woman let out an extremely unpleasant roar, and 2 short black wings suddenly sprouted from her back. Squawk, squawk. The bald woman flew into the air and looked down at the ground fiercely. She flapped her short wings and swooped down from a height of 100 meters. She looked like she was going to throw Arbor to the ground and tear it apart. I wonder what level this corpse puppet is. The peony fairy said with a strange expression, it seems that it has evolved to a certain extent. Compared to the little monsters we saw before, this zombie can fly and mutate parts of its body. She doesn't seem like a high-level zombie. While everyone was discussing, the purple flames in Mo Lien's hands had already built a high defensive wall of fire in front of the two of them. When the bald woman swooped down, she crashed into the flames. Immediately, she screamed in pain and subconsciously retreated. Kill them. Don't leave a single one alive. Madame Ne Fong rushed forward with several hundred personal guards and bellowed while pointing at Arbor and the others. Several hundred spiritual cultivators rushed forward, but before they could get close to Arbor and Mo Lien, they were stopped by little Tai Sui and the others. Chapter 2181. What? You want to win with numbers? Dao Wuji chuckled and summoned his large saber from his consciousness. He slung it over his shoulder. Come, come, come. Grandpa will play with you. A spirit master around 40 years old coldly glanced at Dao Wuji. He stomped on the ground and shot toward Dao Wuji. Originally, Shaoqin thought that he would be able to send Dao Wuji flying with this punch. But unexpectedly he was bounced back in the same way he had charged over. His speed was twice as fast as before. His entire body tumbled as he was struck by Dao Wuji's punch. His mouth and nose were bleeding, and he howled as he was sent flying. Hundreds of spirit masters' expressions darkened. They looked at Dao Wuji as if they were facing a great enemy. They knew that brother's cultivation very well. He was a rank 7 spirit master, but he couldn't even last one move against this pretty boy. Go! A spirit master clenched his teeth. He waved his hand and everyone rushed forward to attack little Tai Sui and the others. A few of them even looked around and set their sights on Arbor, who was idly watching from the side. Arbor was standing behind Mo Lien's defensive wall of fire. He coldly watched the bald woman swoop back and forth in the air, trying to break through Mo Lien's defensive wall of fire. Unexpectedly, the sound of wind whistling could be heard in his ears. Mo Lien didn't even turn her head. Several black lotus seals flew out with a flick of her finger. She didn't even look at them and directly shot toward the sneak attackers. As soon as the black lotus seal came into contact with the skin of the sneak attackers, it immediately burst open, and a thick layer of black fog instantly swallowed the attackers. Faint cries of struggle came from the depths of the black fog. In the blink of an eye, those people had already transformed into ashes and completely vanished into thin air. The group of spirit masters who turned around to look at them couldn't help but shudder violently when they saw this. Their eyes were slightly frightened as they looked at the ruthless young man. These people looked so young. Unexpectedly, their cultivations were much higher than theirs. At this moment, these spirit masters couldn't help but feel some regret in their hearts. If Madame Fong had not promised them great benefits, how could they have disobeyed Hall Master Gong's orders and recklessly followed Madame Fang's orders? At the same time, the man wearing the devil mask was coldly looking at a maid who was kneeling on the ground and trembling slightly. You said that Madame Fong led more than 500 people over. The maid nodded vigorously. Hall Master, Madam didn't do it on purpose. Not on purpose. Hall Master Gong sneered. She went against her master's orders and made a decision on her own. I think she must have been used to living like a princess for so many years that she forgot her true identity. She was just a dog that the master had taken in. She was so disobedient and even wanted to betray the master. This ambitious woman, as the master had said, could not be kept. Hall Master, what about Ollie? Although our people have rushed over, Ollie's strength and speed are extraordinary. We may not be able to suppress her. Hall Master Gong coldly looked outside the hall. He could occasionally hear the sounds of fighting and killing coming from outside. Let's go. The subordinate's expression suddenly froze. Let's go. Could it be that Hall Master Gong wanted to give up on the special class corpse puppet? However, it wasn't just a matter of time for a special class corpse puppet to take shape. Chapter 2182. This still required the investment of a large amount of manpower and resources. How could he give up on such a meticulous nurturing just like that? Hall Master Gong was truly generous. It's just a disobedient pet, Hall Master Gong said coldly and waved his hand. In any case, it's just trash. It doesn't matter. Since that's the case, Hall Master, should we evacuate the Shantian guards now? Hall Master Gong nodded. Go ahead. You take them away first. I'll. Hall Master, it's bad, it's bad. When Hall Master Gong heard the voice, his brows involuntarily creased. He looked up coldly at the slightly plump middle-aged man who barged in. Wu Meng, how many times have I told you? Don't be so alarmed when something happens. Sorry, Hall Master. The plump middle-aged man swayed his body and giggled foolishly. What happened? Hall Master Gong asked coldly. Hall Master. The corpse poison in the Shantian guards suddenly flared up and bit everyone they saw. Now, the number of people affected has spread to more than 10,000. Although the fat man had a silly look on his face, his words were like beans pouring out of a bamboo tube. He spoke very quickly and in a very organized manner. Therefore, Hall Master Gong's face turned green when he heard this person's report. Feng Lan, you're indeed gutsy, feigning compliance on the surface but opposing on the inside. Hall Master Gong gnashed his teeth and sneered. He raised his hand and said angrily, what are you still standing there for? Quickly evacuate the unharmed members of the Shantian guards. Hall Master, this matter is still rather difficult, Wu Meng hurriedly said. Wu Meng hurriedly said, although our people went over to control it, the corpse poison acted up very quickly. Once bitten, the person will immediately turn into a corpse within a quarter of an hour. Hall Master Gong clenched his fists tightly. It should be the corpse poison of the special grade zombie we left behind. They were originally only used for small-scale experiments, but they didn't expect the deranged Feng Lan to throw them into the Shantian guards. Could it be that the Shantian guards, which had 100,000 mystic cultivators and 1,000 spiritual cultivators, would be completely assimilated into a chaotic zombie army? That damned Feng Lan. She didn't hesitate to do this for her own selfish desires. It was him who underestimated a woman's hatred. Branch Master Gong tightened the obsidian bracelet on his wrist and subconsciously moved the round black stone. Damn it. Hall Master. Should we go out and take a look? Hall Master Gong shook his head. If we go and see Feng Lan now, she will only be more pleased with herself. Quickly bring some people over and bring out those Shantian guards who have not yet been infected. Hall Master, what if we make a mistake and bring out those infected with corpse poison and mix them into the normal group? What should we do then? Hall Master Gong's head was about to explode. At this moment, he felt like his head was about to explode. When he heard his subordinate say such words, he couldn't help but be angry. Then open your eyes and take a good look before you speak. After he finished speaking, he waved his hand and asked them to scram. He walked back and forth in the hall a few times before he reached out and took out a communication jade talisman from his inner world. He reported everything that had happened here, including Feng Lan's disloyalty and corpse puppet Ali's disobedience to his command to his master. Soon, the other party replied with a line of words, abandon all of them. This meant that he didn't want the mutated Shantian guards either. Branch Master Gong glanced at the transfer order for the Shantian guards in his hand and couldn't help but sneer. Bang! He smashed the transfer order into pieces. Chapter 2183. As though he still couldn't vent his anger, Hall Master Gong ruthlessly stomped on the shard again. Feng Lan thought she had won, but she would soon realize that she had utterly lost. The little stoic wasn't that easy to deal with. Naive. Besides, Master wouldn't let this matter pass so easily. Only death awaited Feng Lan. At this time, outside the bamboo building, the battle between Arbor's group and the bald woman and Feng Lan's group was nearing its end. From beginning to end, the bald woman hadn't been able to take a single step past the lightning bolt. She could only glare furiously and madly at Arbor through the defensive fire wall as she cursed. However, her curses seemed to be stuck in her throat, making it completely indiscernible. It was extremely strenuous for her to even pronounce the two words, Arbor, let alone curse normally. Arbor expressionlessly glanced at this person. He only felt that the veins on that woman's bald head were bulging one by one. As far as the eye could see, they looked like earthworms twisting crookedly on her head, making him instinctively feel extremely disgusted. "Ah, roar, ah!" The bald woman roared at the sky in extreme grief and indignation. She pounced down again and again, crashing into Mo Lian's defensive fire barrier. As a result, she was flung back again and again. She was covered in cuts and bruises, but she still couldn't break through the defensive wall. Her furious gaze landed on Mo Lian, and she roared at Mo Lian for a while. Mo Lian simply didn't know what this person was roaring about. He only lowered his head to check on his wife's body. "Are you frightened? My Jojo, don't look at such an ugly thing. It stings your eyes." Arbor patted his chest. "I'm not scared at all. At least, her appearance isn't much different from a normal person's. It's better than those zombies that shed rotten flesh as they run, right?" "Fuck, the zombies that shed rotten flesh as they run are here." Dao Wuji's ghostly wails and howls came from the other end. Arbor's mouth twitched as he turned around to take a look. His eyeballs nearly popped out. Was this really true? All of a sudden, the back of the row of bamboo houses began to swarm. One after another, graceful zombies emerged from the back of the bamboo houses and lunged at little Taisui and the others. Jojo bro jinxed it. "Oh my, you scared this little sister to death." Fairy Ginkgo stretched out two fingers and gently patted her chest. In the blink of an eye, she savagely beat the few corpse puppets that had pounced over into pieces and rolled on the ground. Peony's movements were even more swift. She directly smashed down several lightning bolts, turning several corpses that were squeezed together into a pile of charred bones. Ma Shichen laughed and said, "It's over, the entire mountain is covered with corpse puppets. Where did so many zombies come from?" Little Taisui also furrowed his brows. 100,000 Shantian guards? No way. Endless Blade immediately cried out exaggeratedly, "Talent. Could it be that they turned the 100,000 Shantian guards into corpse puppets because they wanted to deal with us? Oh wait, the Feng family is here, and a swarm of corpse puppets has appeared among the Shantian guards. Could it be that these Shantian guards aren't Gung Pengcheng's private army, but rather a team assembled by the Feng family?" Everyone looked at Endless Blade with measuring eyes. Heavens, Endless Blade could actually come up with such an analysis. This was the first time this had ever happened. Everyone revealed expressions of admiration and looked Endless Blade up and down again. Arbor also glanced at Endless Blade, giving him a look that said, "This child is worth teaching. This brother's IQ is finally online." Chapter 2184. Yuan Shichen was not stingy with her praise. "It's rare to see you so smart. You must have paid a lot of attention to improving your brain recently. It's good to improve your brain. Little Tai Sui chimed in. Since it's so effective, remember to improve your brain often in the future. Don't make it worse. Fuck you. Dao Wuji glared at Yuan Shichen in annoyance, then glared at little Tai Sui. It's rare for me to be wise, but there are so many people who can't stand to see me doing well and are mocking me. What the hell is going on? Dao Wuji rolled his eyes and glared back at them one by one. I'll take out a small notebook later and write them down one by one. In the future. I'll mock them back. Everyone looked at the endless stream of zombies and charged forward with their sabers. This time, they had to be serious. Feng Lan looked on coldly for a while. Seeing that the bald woman who had been hovering in the air was unable to break through Prince Mo's defense line, she couldn't help but frown. This young couple was really detestable. Feng Lan waved her hand, and 4 or 5 maids immediately came over with a cart of spiritual energy balls. They put 3 or 4 spiritual energy balls into something that looked like a small catapult and aimed it in the direction of Mo Lian and Arbor. A chilly glint leaked out of Feng Lan's eyes. Qiao Mu, was it you people who harmed my husband and stole his soul? With a flick of Qiao Mu's finger, several hundred defensive talismans made from ebony flew out. They circled around Mo Lian's defensive firewall and tightly encircled the firewall, adding 2 layers of protection. Feng Lan questioned sternly, what? You dare to do it but don't dare to admit it. Why wouldn't I dare to admit it? Arbor sneered. You reap what you sow. Gung Pengcheng sent people to trick me and assassinate me many times. Why can't I retaliate? Am I a pitiful little girl who can be beaten and scolded? Is it my fault that I resisted? Feng Lan stared at her with a pale face and anxiously cursed, Old Gung has never met you before. Why did he? Halfway through her words, Feng Lan paused as a faint light of understanding flashed in her eyes. What's your relationship with Long Chuyun? Are you? Arbor's expression changed. Just as he was about to fly out of the defensive layer, Mo Lian suddenly reached out and hugged him tightly. Don't be fooled. This woman is trying to lure you over. Mo Lian looked at Feng Lan indifferently, a trace of coldness flashing in her eyes. It doesn't matter if you don't say it. We can probably guess it. Although the Shuntian Prefecture's prefecture lord married you, he probably never had you in his heart. You're talking nonsense. Feng Lan's face instantly twisted. Mo Lian was actually just bluffing her a little, but who would have thought that Feng Lan would be duped by him at once? Hence, he had a better grasp of the situation. He looked at Madame Nei Feng with a sneer and said, your husband has someone else in his heart. That person should be a member of the Mu clan, right? Feng Lan's pupils almost shrank. What kind of emotion could make a person willingly self-detonate their spiritual conscience in order to keep the secret with them? Mo Lian smiled faintly as he sized up the pale-faced Feng Lan. I can understand Prefecture Lord Gung's actions very well. In this world, only true love can make a man willingly go to such lengths. Chapter 2185. Arbor blinked and looked up at her husband. Is that so? She turned her head and glanced at Feng Lan, whose face had turned green and white. She suddenly felt that the crown prince seemed to have guessed correctly. Looking at Feng Lan's extremely pale complexion, she probably knew that her husband had someone else in his heart. You should only be guessing. Why does Manor Lord Gung want to deal with my Jojo? Mo Lian continued faintly, you probably know a little, but I'm afraid you don't know the specifics of what he's done. Based on your relationship as husband and wife, Manor Lord Gung shouldn't have told you about the missions he took on outside of Sky Fate, right? The person Gung Pengcheng wants to protect at all costs. Your love rival, that Mu family member, although she didn't do anything, she easily stole your husband's heart. Your life is truly pitiful, always living under the shadow of another person. You're in pain, you're struggling, and you're tormented, but to Manor Lord Gung, you're as insignificant as a speck of dust. You won't attract any of his attention. You've fallen deeply in love with your husband for decades, but unfortunately, the person you love is willing to sacrifice everything for another woman, even to the point of self-detonating his spiritual sense. When Mo Lian's venomous tongue flared up, not to mention a mentally wounded woman, even someone with a strong psychological resistance wouldn't be able to withstand it. Shut up! Feng Lan screamed agitatedly. Arbor opened her small mouth and looked up at her husband with adoration. Heavens! Her husband had actually guessed correctly. Mo Lian lowered his head to look at the little fellow, and he tapped her small head lightly with a finger in amusement. Jojo was good at everything, but she was always a bit muddle-headed when it came to matters of the heart. If you want her to guess why Gung Pengcheng self-detonated, she might as well kill Gung Pengcheng directly. With her EQ, it was impossible for her to understand why Gung Pengcheng would go to such lengths for a woman. Oh, maybe she wouldn't even be able to guess that the person Gung Pengcheng wanted to protect was a woman. Why should I shut up? Mo Lian continued to provoke the woman, you pitiful and sad woman. Have you ever thought that the man you're risking everything to take revenge for has never cared about you in his entire life? You're really wishful thinking. Hu Shichen was speechless. This guy's mouth was really poisonous. Even a man like him couldn't stand it, let alone this crazy woman in front of him. Feng Lan's mind was filled with the thought that he had self-detonated. He had self-detonated. His spiritual sense had self-detonated. He had detonated his spiritual sense for that woman. He wasn't killed by someone else, but by his own self-detonation. He blew himself up. Ah! Although the young man in front of him had a vicious mouth, there was one thing he was right about. She had taken over Gung Pengcheng's position and worked hard to take revenge. However, in Gung Pengcheng's heart, he probably didn't care whether she would take revenge for him or not. But even if he told her this, even if that was the case, she still couldn't control her final feelings. She was like a burning devil's snare, poisonous but beautiful. Perhaps only death would be her final destination. Shut up, I don't want to listen to you anymore. Shut up, shut up, shut up. Feng Lan let out a shrill shriek as her eyes turned red. Arbor looked at her crazy appearance and couldn't help but sigh softly. Chapter 2186. Mo Lian coldly glanced at Feng Lan. Do you know why he blew himself up? Because your love rival, that woman's subordinate, wanted to betray her and say that woman's name. In the end, Gung Pengcheng hugged your love rival subordinate and blew himself up, taking that subordinate with him to the afterlife. Look, how much he cherished your love rival. Ah! Feng Lan's eyes were bloodshot. Shi Huixin. Shi Huixin. I won't let you off, you bitch, bitch, bitch. She screamed crazily. This scream came from the bottom of her heart. Shi Huixin. Arbor coldly said this stranger's name. In all these years, she had never heard of this name. This name, which Mo Lian spent a lot of effort to trick out of Feng Lan's mouth, was Shi Huixin. Was she her mother's former enemy? Was she also her current enemy? Mo Lian was holding his wife, so he naturally knew that the little fellow's emotions were fluctuating, and her breathing was fluctuating. Thus, he lowered his head and whispered in her ear, "Don't take it too seriously." Maybe Shi Huixin is an imaginary enemy that Feng Lan conjectured herself. This matter still needs to be investigated, so I'll have someone do it. Shut up. Shut up, shut up. Separated by a layer of defensive firewall and 2 layers of ebony defensive array, although Fong Lan couldn't clearly hear what the two were whispering about. She was already in a deranged state, and she screamed angrily out of humiliation, "All of you, shut up." Arbor coldly glanced at her and didn't say anything. Just as Mo Lien said, whether everything was true or not still needed further investigation. She didn't want to listen to Fong Lan's one-sided story. Of course, if this woman, Shi Huixin, really had a problem, she wouldn't let her off. Jojo. Mo Lien reached out and stroked the hair on her temples, saying softly, "Don't worry, I'm here for everything." Arbor nodded and turned to look at Fong Lan, who was in a deranged state. Fong Lan was greatly shocked. At this time, she was still unable to recover from the news that Gung Pengcheng had self-destructed because of that woman. She raised her hand crazily, and a few servants immediately pulled the mechanism of the catapult with a sullen face. After a few whooshing sounds, the entire catapult trembled slightly, and several balls of spiritual energy were launched out with a series of bangs. Like shooting stars, several spiritual energy balls landed on the defensive talisman matrix that Xiao Mu had set up with a thud. The defensive array glyphs were instantly smashed by the spiritual energy ball. The entire array glyphs were instantly turned into fine powder. Arbor coldly glanced over, and his gaze fell on Madame Feng's face, who seemed to have gone mad. "I want all of you to die here today." Madame Feng screamed. Her body was like a willow leaf, trembling in the wind. "Arbor, die!" Madame Feng screamed and waved her hand heavily. Immediately, 4 or 5 spirit energy balls rushed towards the defensive array glyphs set up in Arbor under her command. Boom! The entire array glyphs were once again turned into nothingness in this violent tremor. At this point, the 2 layers of array glyphs set up by Arbor were completely destroyed by the spiritual energy balls. Xiao Mu creased her brows and swept an indifferent glance at Madame Nei Feng. This person wasn't a cultivator. She was just an ordinary woman who had coincidentally obtained the special ability of speed and strength. Originally, it was impossible for her to break Arbor's double array glyphs by herself. Chapter 2187. Arbor glanced at Madame Feng in displeasure. Just as she was about to throw out more defensive array glyphs, Mo Lien reached out and pressed down on her small hand. "Wait a moment," he said softly as he held her hand. 1 or 2 of these spiritual energy balls couldn't break Jojo's defensive array glyphs. But releasing several of them in a row with this kind of dispenser was very powerful. He didn't want Jojo's defensive array glyphs to be broken by that woman every time. Rather than letting his wife waste her energy, it was better for him to deal with this woman. He waved his hand, and clusters of gorgeous red flames jumped between his fingers like dancing fairies. Xiao Mu raised her head to look at him. She saw these clusters of small flames that resembled fairies slowly fusing together. Then, a purple flame sprang up from within and completely merged with the scarlet flame. Whoosh! That flame pounced at Fong Lan as fast as lightning. Fong Lan shouted loudly, "This kind of speed can't hurt me at all." Just as she finished speaking, Fong Lan felt as if she was hit by a huge force. Her entire body was instantly enveloped by heat. The red and purple flames completely wrapped around her limbs, giving off steaming hot flames. Fong Lan felt as if her bones were placed on top of a bonfire, and she couldn't move at all. Damn it, there was definitely something strange about the man in front of her. His fire spiritual energy was completely different from others. She was actually slapped in the face. This thought flashed through Fong Lan's mind with grief and indignation. Her special abilities of speed and strength were completely useless in front of those who were truly supreme in terms of strength. Fong Lan didn't know that Mo Lien's fire spiritual energy was mixed with medicinal power. Naturally, it was different from others. Roar roar. The special grade zombie named Ali suddenly roared, and a small spatial whirlpool suddenly appeared in front of Mo Lien. This whirlpool disappeared as quickly as it appeared. When Arbor reached out to grab it, Prince Mo's figure actually quickly disappeared in that whirlpool. This female zombie actually grasped the special ability of teleportation? Arbor looked at her dear husband who was teleported away with a stunned expression. She was so angry that her head hurt. Her husband was taken away by a demon. This simply made her feel unwell. The little fellow didn't expect that this bald female zombie had actually comprehended a special ability. This was something she had never seen before. Her husband. Arbor waved out hundreds of butterflies and shouted in exasperation, "Go find that bald female zombie." Whoosh, 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 whoosh. A group of butterflies immediately flapped their wings and flew in all directions. At the same time, Hall Master Gong's group, who had already retreated from the valley. Gong coldly glanced at the bottom of the cliff. "Hall Master, do you want to burn the entire valley below?" Wu Meng made a gesture of setting fire to the valley. Hall Master Gong glanced at him indifferently, and the fat man called Wu Meng immediately stopped talking. Because he knew when he needed to speak, and when he needed him to shut up. Just like now, Hall Master's meaning was very clear. He didn't want to make Arbor's group an enemy for the time being. Since that was the case, as a subordinate, it wasn't convenient for him to say anything. "How should we report to Master about Ollie when we return?" Wu Meng couldn't help but ask. Hall Master Gong turned around and glanced at him indifferently. "What's there to report?" Chapter 2188. Wu Meng was slightly taken aback. Hall Master Gong glanced at him and said coldly, "I'll tell you the truth. Ollie, this failed evolution product, doesn't have many days left to live." This was the first time Wu Meng had heard of this. He couldn't help but ask curiously, "Is what Hall Master said true?" Hall Master Gong nodded with a cold expression. "Master has long since given up on this failed product. When this special class zombie was promoted to rank 2, she was given many precious medicines. Among them was a medicinal liquid specially used to promote special abilities. This special class zombie comprehended the special ability of spatial teleportation. Unfortunately, the teleportation range is limited to 100 feet, so it's practically useless. Her special ability was different from ordinary people's, which could be upgraded by absorbing the crystal cores in low-class zombies' brains. Her special ability was permanent. Her special ability would remain at whatever level it was supposed to be. She wouldn't be able to upgrade even half a step until she died. Therefore, although this person had become a special class zombie, it was useless. Her special ability level hadn't reached special class at all. Hall Master Gong silently looked up at the completely darkened sky. "Let's go." This valley couldn't be used anymore. The Shuntian Sentinels were almost completely wiped out here. However, this didn't matter to Hall Master Gong. Since Master had given the order, then they should give up. Wu Meng turned back and looked deeply at the valley before following Hall Master Gong's footsteps. With the two of them leaving like this, it meant that they had completely given up on the Shuntian Sentinels and special class zombies. Of course, to them, Fenglan was an existence they could do without. However, they couldn't help but feel that it was a pity for the 100,000 elite soldiers that they had painstakingly nurtured. After the two of them left, the deep valley below was still covered by smoke. The poisonous insects and creatures in the valley seemed to have sensed something as they all crawled out of their nests and scrambled to climb up the cliff. For some reason, it felt like a storm was about to come. Feng Chen strode up to Qiao Mu and stared at her small face that was flushed red from anger. Suppressing the laughter in his heart, he coughed lightly and reassured, "Don't worry, that female zombie's ability is limited. This venerable one doesn't think they can move too far. This baldy caught my husband." Arbor was exasperated. She was really angry. That female monster had actually taken her husband away in front of her. How preposterous. Feng Chen coughed lightly when she heard this. I don't think that spatial vortex is too big. I estimate that it's only about 100 feet in diameter. It won't exceed that by too much. Why don't we split up and look for it? Arbor shook his head and looked at the black poison-tailed butterflies fluttering in the air. He said softly, let's go. We already have a direction. Feng Chen nodded and turned to give Dao Wuji and the others a look, telling them to continue to stay here and exterminate the corpse puppets that had lost their minds. He called little Tai Sui and followed Jojo and the poison-tailed butterfly to Mo Lien. The poison-tailed butterfly fluttered its wings and quickly led Arbor's group to a place. Walking into the valley from the valley, there was a small, gurgling stream. Both paths were filled with lush trees. Behind the layers of trees, there was an old wooden house hidden in the middle. Arbor pushed aside the branches and rushed over. In the end, she saw a scene that made her very angry. Chapter 2189. The bald demoness had found a red veil from somewhere and covered her head. She was determined to grab Mo Lien's hand. Mo Lien dodged her several times, but was strangely trapped in the 4 small vortexes. No matter where he dodged, there was always the possibility of being sucked in. Arbor! Exclamation point. On the other hand, Feng Chen couldn't resist laughing. My heavens, this zombie is disguised as a ghost. Does it want to marry Mo Lien? Arbor quickly walked toward her husband. She originally wanted to avoid the spatial vortexes and fly to her husband's side, but the vortexes were very strange. Once a person got close, they would be sucked in by an endless suction force. Miss Chiao was furious. She looked coldly at the bald female zombie with the red veil, who was desperately trying to pounce to her husband's side. She was courting death. Chiao Mu's gaze harshly shot out a burst of water spiritual energy at the bald female zombie's back. The water spirit rippled into the air and instantly turned into millions of ice shards, which shot toward the bald female zombie's head. This sudden attack forced the female zombie to give up on pursuing Mo Lien, and she could only turn around to deal with Chiao Mu first. Arbor naturally wouldn't be polite with this monster. After the first wave of ice shards, the second wave came. Arbor had basically reached the point of perfection in the use of water and with spirit power. Thus, it was a piece of cake for her to consecutively unleash instantaneous attacks. Roar, roar, roar. After being smashed by 3 waves of ice rain, the special class zombie fell backward, dizzy and disoriented. With a wave of Chiao Mu's small hand, rows of earth spikes burrowed out from under the special level zombie's feet and abruptly transformed into several hundred confinement vines, firmly binding the special level zombie's legs within the vines. Ah! Ah! This zombie could actually let out a very human-like scream. Arbor couldn't help but look at her a few more times. Compared to any of the corpse puppets in the past, the one in front of him clearly had a complete intelligence. She could even look at him with resentment in her eyes. However, a corpse puppet was still a corpse puppet. She was something that could be resurrected after death. Her value was very, very low. Roar! The special grade zombie lifted the red veil on its head and glared at Arbor in front of it. He seemed to be resentful that she had rushed over at such a critical juncture. Her wedding ceremony was ruined by this woman again. This vicious woman, it was her who had turned her into this state that was neither human nor ghost. It was her. He ordered her to be pushed down from the city gate tower to be fed to the zombies, making her suffer pain and torture before she died. Such a vicious woman was actually able to win Prince Mo's affections, and he actually treated her like the apple of his eye. On what basis? How was she inferior to this unruly, willful, arrogant, and unbridled woman in front of her? She, Wei Mingli, refused to accept this. Arbor's thoughts suddenly moved, and the startled swan dagger suddenly appeared and pierced through the special class zombie's left shoulder blade. As a corpse puppet, she naturally didn't feel any pain, but the startled swan dagger was no ordinary item. Therefore, after being pierced by the startled swan dagger, the bald female corpse puppet suddenly felt that her entire left arm couldn't move. It was unbearably stiff. After all, ever since she had advanced to become a special class zombie, her entire body was no different from a human's flexibility. But now that a trace of anger flashed across the bald female's face. Chapter 2190. Damn it. Finally, Xiao Mu heard the bald female zombie's words clearly. As expected, this zombie already had emotions of its own and could even curse people. Arbor glanced at her curiously and then instinctively asked, "Do you have memories of when you were a human?" Roar. The female zombie roared angrily at Arbor. Her eyes flickered with a bone-deep hatred. Yes, she wanted nothing more than to kill Arbor right now. However, this woman's strength was several notches higher than before. It would be very difficult to kill her if she didn't succeed in one hit. Wei Mingli, Wei Mingli. The female zombie roared these words in a very strange voice. Xiao Mu expended a great deal of effort before realizing that the three words she said were Wei something Li. Arbor carefully sized her up again and shook his head. "I don't know you." Fortunately, Wei Mingli couldn't be considered a human in essence. Thus, she didn't explode in anger at Arbor, but her eyes were filled with a strange look. At the same time, Mo Lian finally broke free of the four-layered space vortex set up by Wei Mingli with several lotus marks. She turned to look at Arbor. He hurriedly flew to her side, but before he could say anything to his wife, Wei Mingli was already beside him. On the side, Wei Mingli seemed to have been bewitched, pouncing on Crown Prince Mo the moment she saw him. This hungry tiger pouncing on its prey was extremely large. Arbor's eyelids twitched at the sight. Without thinking too much, he directly sent a flying kick towards Wei something Li. "What are you doing?" Not only did this whimsical female zombie want to secretly marry Mo Lian, but she also wanted to pounce on her husband right in front of her. She simply didn't know what death was. On the other side, Wei Mingli, who was blocked by Arbor, was 100 times more furious and tormented than Arbor. Especially when she saw Prince Mo walk over and naturally wrap his arm around the little girl's waist, Wei Mingli felt the world's malice toward her. His eyes were still so focused. Wei Mingli reflexively touched her vein-covered cheek. His face was truly frightening. Walking on the streets at night would probably scare people to death. In the past, when she was as beautiful as a flower, the crown prince didn't even spare her a glance, let alone now. But she couldn't accept it. Arbor, that little bitch, she didn't even remember who she was. Since that was the case. A vicious glint flitted across Wei Mingli's eyes. Wei Mingli abruptly jumped to her feet and screamed, "I'll let you completely remember who I am." Wei Mingli suddenly stretched out her hands and raised them toward the sky. Immediately, 7 or 8 spatial vortexes appeared around Arbor. It wanted to suck her in. Scram! Arbor couldn't help but get angry. This female corpse puppet actually wanted to transfer her out of here. He wanted to occupy her lotus with all his heart. Jojo. Mo Lian only felt her heart skip a beat, and she was about to pounce over. Suddenly, a person rushed out from the side and pressed down on Arbor at an incomparably fast speed, forcefully flipping her to the ground. At the same time, Arbor only felt that the figure pressing down on top of her seemed to be squeezed by spatial power and vibrated. With a pft, she spat out a mouthful of blood. That person's aura instantly turned from strong to weak, becoming dispirited. Arbor narrowed her eyes at the woman pressing down on top of her, and her gaze couldn't help but become angry. Who told you to act on your own and save me? Sleep. Chapter 2191. Die. A dark red glint flashed through Arbor's eyes. In a split second, the soil in front of the female zombie started rolling, and countless rocks rained down on her head. Bam, bam, bam. After several bangs, Wei Mingli struggled and screamed. She barely revealed half her face from under the jagged rocks and screamed at Arbor. Arbor, you'll die a horrible death. Wei Mingli mumbled these words. To be honest, Miss Chiao couldn't hear a single word clearly. Her eyes were filled with the blood on her hands. This blood wasn't her own, but Yilingmin's. Yilingmin's body was stained with blood, and she was barely breathing. She looked like she wouldn't die in this world. Arbor looked down at her. He stretched out his small hand and immediately stuffed several pills into Yilingmin's mouth. At the same time, he raised countless sharp ice spikes with his right hand and pierced them toward the bald female zombie's head. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The sound of something breaking through the air rang out. Wei Mingli roared. Now that she was crushed under a pile of rocks, she was like a target. Naturally, the ice spikes hit her accurately. Hundreds of ice spikes immediately pierced her into a sieve. Boom! Wei Mingli's strength suddenly surged, and she abruptly shifted the pile of rocks on top of her. However, before he could get up, he felt that his limbs were entangled by endless vines. They wrapped around her tightly, layer upon layer. She tried her best to break free, but unfortunately, after breaking free of one layer, dozens of layers of vines wrapped around her again. From afar, Wei Mingli seemed to have become a giant cocoon. Arbor knew that Feng Qin had made a move, so he immediately summoned the startled swan dagger while Wei Mingli was entangled by the giant vines. The startled swan dagger buzzed in the air. It was connected to its master's mind, and it swiftly stabbed toward Wei Mingli's head. Ah! Wei Mingli let out a piercing scream. Being stabbed in the head by the startled swan dagger was no joke. However, Wei Mingli was already a special-grade zombie, and her head was much harder than any other zombies. The startled swan dagger failed to pierce through the special-grade corpse puppet's vital points, but it did cause some damage to her. This made Wei Mingli a little scared. She originally thought that after her body was made into a monster like a corpse puppet, both her strength and speed would be greatly improved. She even obtained a very rare dimensional vortex arcana. But now, she suddenly felt that she might not be as strong and invincible as she thought. She seemed to be able to die, too, when Arbor realized that Wei Mingli hadn't been stabbed to death by the startled swan dagger. She couldn't help but frown. This female zombie named Wei something Li seemed to have a brain structure that was very different from other low-level zombies. Just now, when the startled swan dagger pierced over, it actually could not pierce her in the slightest. His head was like an iron plate, and he couldn't go in at all. Arbor narrowed his eyes at Wei Mingli, feeling a little angry. The startled swan dagger was no ordinary spiritual weapon. Mo Lian said that it was a growth-type weapon. In other words, as her cultivation level rose, this spiritual weapon could very likely advance to a divine weapon or even a holy weapon. Yet, this startled swan dagger actually couldn't kill that zombie. Xiao Moot clenched her fists and lowered her head to look at the silent Yilingmin. Chapter 2192. When she looked up to stare at the female zombie again, her eyes were already below the freezing point. A mere zombie dares to be so arrogant in front of me. Did she really think that there was nothing she could do to her? Arbor had already lost all patience with this fellow in front of him. He directly summoned a dozen or so explosive birds from Paradise Planet and had them carry out a suicidal explosion on Wei Mingli. The pile of rocks was blasted into pieces. Wei Mingli was sent flying by the shockwave. Mo Lian's finger moved, and a sharp arrow formed from purple flames instantly shot out. It only took one exchange before it burrowed out of Wei Mingli's head. Wei Mingli wanted to scream, but it was already too late. Her head was instantly like a watermelon that had been cut open. Half of it fell off one side, splitting into two in an instant. The way she died was very disgusting. Arbor swept a glance before retracting his gaze. Mo Lian's sharp arrow of purple flames just so happened to aim at Wei Mingli's head, and it completely pierced through Wei Mingli's terrified and incredulous gaze before she was completely done for was quite hilarious. What was there for her to be frightened and unable to understand? Could it be that she thought that Mo Lian would have tender, protective feelings for her? Simply laughable. From start to finish, Arbor still couldn't recall who this Wei Mingli was. Instead, it was the Crown Prince who remembered. This woman was precisely the bait used to feed the zombies when the Mo Kingdom capital was besieged by zombies. But all of this didn't matter anymore. Since his Jojo couldn't recall, then he shouldn't think about it. In any case, the trouble had already been resolved. Cough, cough, cough. Yi Lingmin coughed violently and slowly opened her eyes. The first thing she saw was Qiao Mu's small, taut face. What did you run out for? Arbor reflexively grasped her wrist. You were corroded by the spatial compression force. You can't be saved, do you understand? Cough, cough. Yi Lingmin nodded with a bitter smile. Even if you didn't come out, nothing would have happened to me. Arbor said angrily. Yes. Yi Lingmin nodded weakly. Arbor pursed his lips and stared at her. Aren't you afraid of death? I'm afraid of death, junior sister. Yi Lingmin said with some difficulty, I only know, but I never thought that I would be able to see master and martial uncles after I die. Being able to see all my senior and junior sisters, I feel very comfortable in my heart. Are you stupid? Second Ant Master and the 200 Holy Water Sect disciples are all alive and well. Where are you going to see them? Arbor wanted to punch her, but he didn't know where to start. Although Yi Lingmin didn't seem to have any external injuries after being squeezed by the power of space, it was obvious that her internal injuries were extremely serious. Her 5 viscera and 6 bowels had probably been crushed into powder under the spatial compression. Now, he was just barely holding on to his last breath, hanging on to a little bit of his spirit, and talking to her like a dying flash. If Yi Lingmin hadn't rushed over and blocked the attack for her, she would have died. Qiao Mu was very clear in her heart that she was probably going to run out of luck. Wei Mingli, this zombie, was more than just a little stronger than other people. She was unable to heal Yi Lingmin's injuries. Her 5 viscera and 6 bowels were already shattered, so there was no way to save her. Unless she could refine the crisis reversal pill now, perhaps she could save Yi Lingmin's life. Chapter 2193. However, it was a pity that being in a hurry could not put out a nearby fire. Looking at Arbor's dejected appearance, Yi Lingmin forced a smile. Don't be sad, little junior sister. I've been looking forward to this day for a full 3 years. This time. Cough cough cough, I can finally be free. I can finally go to the netherworld. I also have the face to see master. Yi Lingmin, who allowed you to die? Hang in there, Arbor said angrily. Don't think that dying is enough. You've done such a wrong thing. Why you still have to continue atoning for your sins? Continue. Arbor spoke incoherently. Unexpectedly, Yi Lingmin reached out to hold her small hand. Little junior sister, Yi Lingmin said softly, forgive me, okay? Arbor pursed her lips and did not say anything. Yi Lingmin could not resist sighing. I will personally go down to the netherworld to atone for my sins. Yi Ling Min. Arbor resisted the urge to grab her and anxiously shouted, "You must have the will to live." Yi Ling Min, Yi. Yi Ling Min glanced at her one last time and said with a smile, "Well, little junior sister, I still remember the first time we met at the Holy Water sect. You pounced on me and used a bamboo chopstick to almost stab my eyes. You were really dazzling back then," Yi Ling Min said softly, her eyes starting to slacken. Yi Ling Min, Yi. Arbor pursed her lips and did her best to hold back her tears. Yi Ling Min. The life-extending pill I gave you is so precious. You should at least hang in there for me. Hang in there for 4 hours so I can think of another way. Yi Ling Min could no longer hear Arbor's voice calling for her. In front of her eyes, like water ripples, a scene of a busy street appeared. She could clearly see the subtle expressions on everyone's faces. She could see the wrinkles at the corners of a plump woman's eyes, and the blushes that the girls had put on. She had been squatting in the corner, hugging her knees. She had been squatting there for 2 days and 3 nights. He felt so hungry that he was about to explode. She was hungry. Her eyes were like a little beast's as she stared at the hibiscus cake in a child's hand. Suddenly, like a hungry tiger pouncing on its prey, he snatched the hibiscus cake and wolfed it down. Wah! The child's cries immediately attracted the attention of the child's mother. The child's mother was probably as big as a small hill. He picked her up and slapped her to the ground. Punches and kicks landed on her small body, kicking her until she almost doubted life. Just when she thought she was going to die. A heavenly voice said, "What a shameless bully." Following that, the auntie, who was as sturdy as a small mountain, was sent flying by someone. That was really a flying kick. She raised her little head and giggled as she watched the auntie being kicked to the roof and hanging there. Although she was spitting blood, she still clapped her little hands happily. Look, the person who hit him was beaten up, right? Therefore, what mother taught was not wrong. Those who bully others will be bullied back one day. She raised her little face, her eyes shining as she looked at the woman in front of her. Chapter 2194. She felt that she probably wouldn't be able to forget this woman for the rest of her life. Her red clothes were alluring, and her face was exquisite and magnificent. She was like a blooming flower of flames, so dazzling that she almost couldn't turn her eyes away. She seemed to hear the woman's gentle voice. "Are you willing to follow me to the Holy Water sect?" She nodded. At the same time, Yi Ling Min, who was gradually losing consciousness, also nodded. At some point in time, young Shirong was silently standing next to Arbor. She dazedly looked at Yi Ling Min, who was slowly walking away with a smile. Yi Ling Min seemed to have fallen asleep with a smile on her lips. No one knew that she seemed to be immersed in a dream right now. In this dream, she wantonly let herself wander further and further away. She still remembered that it was truly a cold winter that year. Master bought her a set of cotton-padded jacket and trousers from a ready-made clothing store and wrapped her up like a fulu doll. At that time, she saw her walking with a blue and white umbrella in front of her. She abruptly turned around and waved at her with a smile. "Come here quickly." Yi Ling Min felt that Murong Sun was incomparably beautiful at that time. There was probably no one in this world who could compare to her. She only wanted to work hard to become the best disciple in Master's heart. She only was unwilling to lose to little junior sister. She only wanted Master to look at her more. She wanted Master to feel proud every time she mentioned Yi Ling Min. Unfortunately, it was an extravagant hope in the end. Yi Ling Min quietly left with a faint smile. Arbor reached out to touch her breathing. He bit his lips and angrily said, "Yi Lingmin. Who told you to die?" Young Shirong couldn't help but sigh. Let her die. This child didn't have the slightest will to live anymore. The reason why she flew out to protect Jojo today was most likely because she was prepared to die. If that's the case, then just let her be. Arbor lowered his head and reflexively tightly grasped Yi Lingmin's hand. Senior. Sister Yi. Young Shirong patted Arbor's head. Jojo, don't be sad. This is Yi Lingmin's own choice. In the end, it all started because of her. Young Shirong sighed. Let her be the one to end it. Arbor lowered his head and said nothing. Young Shirong couldn't help but sigh. Jojo, the dead are gone. What we need to do now is to look to the future. Arbor nodded. She understood the logic, but understanding was one thing. Seeing Yi Lingmin die with her own eyes was another. She really hated this senior sister in her heart. But watching her die with his own eyes, he felt very sad. It wasn't easy for the Holy Water sect to reach this point. Arbor said in a low voice, I hope that from now on, we won't have any more disciples making unnecessary sacrifices. She hoped that from now on, everyone in the Holy Water sect would be neat and tidy, and not a single person would be missing. Young Shirong patted her head in relief. If it's our Jojo, I believe you can do it. After Second Ant Master said this, she glared fiercely at Prince Mo, who was trying to walk up and interrupt their conversation. Mo Lien glanced at Second Ant Master aggrievedly. When she saw Arbor looking over, she hurriedly flew over and hugged her, shouting, Jojo, Second Ant Master glared at me again just now. Do you have any fucking shame? Second Ant Master rolled her eyes grumpily at the sky. Xiao Mu was tormented by the two people's jesting, but half of the sorrow in her heart was washed away. Chapter 2195. Jojo, Mo Lien said angrily, Second Uncle Master doesn't like me. Arbor looked at her husband sympathetically. Husband, there's a reason why Second Uncle Master doesn't like you. What's the reason? Mo Lien asked curiously. You're beautiful. Arbor raised her small hand and stroked his chin, then floated away. Mo Lien, exclamation point. Was he being teased by his wife? Young Shirong, dot. Arbor came to Yi Lingmin's side and put her bones into the peach blossom slope, then asked Little Tree to bury Yi Lingmin beside her senior sisters. Yi Lingmin's matter was considered to be over. Just as Second Uncle Master said, it was impossible to save a person who had lost the will to live no matter how much you wanted to. Reporting to the Crown Princess, we found the Shuntian Prefecture's Prefecture Lord in the dungeon. Bring them up. Xiao Mu reflexively looked behind Tong's group. Reporting to the Crown Prince. The Shuntian Prefecture's people are basically under control. 1/3 of them have already mutated into zombie puppets. We're still not sure if the other 2/3 have mutated or not. When Mo Lien heard this, he nodded and said, then deal with the mutated zombie puppets. As for the remaining people, isolate them for the time being. If symptoms appear, kill them. The subordinate nodded in agreement and left to carry out the order. Arbor looked up at Prince Mo and reached out a small paw. Mo Lien looked at her in amusement and naturally reached out to grab her hand, pulling her to his side. What's wrong? When are we going to the Divine Lands? She really wanted to try her ship that could cross the 3 states and 6 prefectures. She wondered if the old man was bragging so well. Was it completely effortless to cross the Divine Lands? This was something that would only be known after trying. Eliminate the remaining military forces of the Shuntian Prefecture. Let Dunzu take charge here. In this way, there was no need to worry that Shuntian Prefecture would stab Jojo in the back again. Xiao Mu nodded when she heard this. Turning his head, he saw Dunzong being carried out. This was really flattering. Mo Lien's two subordinates found a rattan chair and carried Dunzong, whose body was tilted over. Beside Dunju was a skinny, dark-skinned boy. His eyes were full of spirit, and he was very clever. Arbor looked at his miserable appearance and couldn't help but cough softly and ask him, "How are you, Dunzong?" It would have been better if he didn't ask, but once he did. Dungeon almost jumped up from the rattan chair. Unfortunately, he didn't have the strength to do so, so he hadn't even lifted a finger yet. This person was covered in cuts and bruises from head to toe. He looked extremely miserable. Standing beside him was a skinny, dark-skinned man. Arbor glanced at him, and the boy immediately bowed respectfully to her. "Respected miss, my name is Meng Mai. Thank you for saving me previously." Arbor nodded at him and glanced at the listless Dungeon. "You saved him." Meng Mai nodded his little head. "I am now the Prefecture Lord's personal bodyguard. Since the Prefecture Lord doesn't despise me for being young, Meng Mai will naturally do my best for the Prefecture Lord." Arbor glanced at Dungeon with disdain. She didn't know what flowery words this guy used to trick this child into working for him. When Dungeon saw Arbor's gaze, he immediately became unhappy. "Little master, why are you looking down on me?" Chapter 2196. Why would I need a reason to despise you? Arbor gave him a look that said, "Figure it out yourself." Then he walked to Dunju and squatted down. Reaching out to check his pulse, Arbor stared at Dunju for a while. Dunju immediately started to look nervous. "What's wrong with my body? Is there a problem? How could this be? Can't you tell what's wrong with me?" This guy was scaring himself for no reason. Before Arbor could say anything, he was already yelling, "Little master, don't scare me. I finally have a body. I don't want my body to be taken away in less than 3 days." Arbor turned to look at him, threw his hand away, and said expressionlessly, "The coating on your tongue is a little yellow. Have you been heaty lately? You also have stomach pains from time to time." "Ah, yes, yes." Tun Tun immediately put on a fawning look and praised, "Little master, your medical skills are really unparalleled." Arbor couldn't be bothered with this bootlicker and said, "You have to eat at least 2 meals a day. I'll prescribe you some medicine for gastrointestinal problems later. Remember to take it on time." Dunju nodded. After Arbor threw down the prescription and left with Mo Lien. Only then did Dunzong exclaim. God, he was fooled by Jojo. Since the topic had changed, he had forgotten to pour out his grievances and strongly request for a change of body. Ah! He was such a pig. He knew that the couple was a scam. In the end, they led him into the trap with just a few words. He completely forgot about the important matter he wanted to ask. Ah! Dunju was so angry that he pounded the armrest of the chair back and forth. He couldn't help but yell in the direction the couple left, "Little master, come back here. This little guy is really troublesome." Mo Lien looked down at Arbor and reached out to touch his head. "Jojo, what did you say just now?" "It's just a trick," Arbor said expressionlessly. "Eating it won't hurt anyway. There is nothing wrong with his body. The main thing is that his external injuries are more serious. When the time comes, I will teach Meng Mai and let him help Dun Shu apply the wound." Mo Lien held back her laughter and nodded. Dun Tun was right. The little guy was really cunning. The two of them found a place where the sun was shining and sat down, waiting for Tong's report. After half an incense stick's worth of time, Tong came running over with his men. "Your Highness, the big and small corpse puppets have been eliminated." Mo Lien nodded. "Pack up and get ready to leave. Everyone immediately decided to leave the valley. Before leaving, Mo Lien set a small fire in the valley. Prince Mo had reinforced a hidden barrier around the valley to prevent the fire from spreading. After doing all this, the young couple held hands and was about to leave. Mo Lien instinctively leaned towards Jojo and glared at Yang Shirong. "This is my Jojo. Second Uncle Master, you're not going to break us up, are you?" "That's not right, Second Uncle Master. Jojo and I love each other more than gold. Our feelings for each other are strong." As Mo Lien spoke, she clasped Arbor's small hand tightly. After saying a few words, she lowered her head and asked Arbor, "Is it Jojo?" Arbor instinctively nodded. "No one can separate us. Is it Jojo?" Xiaomu dazedly nodded her head again. "Second Uncle Master, your cold expression is very strange." Mo Lien huffed angrily. Chapter 2197. Jojo likes me so much. If she doesn't have me, what will she do? Am I right, Jojo? Xiaomu might have been listening to what Mo Lien was saying at the beginning, but after he spoke so much, Xiaomu only nodded her head as per her usual habit. She simply didn't listen to what this guy was saying. Prince Mo already knew about this habit of Jojo's. Hence, he said a series of words, and sure enough, the little guy followed suit and nodded. Yang Shirong, who was standing at the side, was so angry that she laughed at Mo Lien. It was obvious that this guy had figured out Jojo's pattern and was waiting to trick her. Second Martial Ant looked unhappy and reached out to pull Arbor to her side. "Jojo, you're so silly. If you get sold, you'll have to pay back the money." Arbor wanted to say that she was silly. But on account of Second Martial Ant's face, she didn't argue. Yang Shirong pulled Arbor and flew out of the valley. Along the way, she couldn't help but exhort, "Jojo, you're still young. Don't be in such a hurry to get married." "Second Martial Ant, I've been married for a long time." Yang Shirong was speechless. What a disappointing little guy. Second Ant Master grumpily glared at Xiaomu. When he glanced back and saw that Mo Lien had caught up, he quickly grabbed Xiaomu's small hand and sped up. Mo Lien was so angry that she laughed. What was Second Martial Ant trying to do? She was trying to stir up trouble. His Jojo. Mo Lien's Jojo was pulled away by Second Martial Ant Yang Shirong. From a distance, the little guy looked back at him reluctantly. Then, he waved at him. "Lien, I'll leave everything here to you." Mo Lien was speechless. Why did she suddenly have a strange sense of danger? Jojo's family was not easy to get along with. They were not as honest as Qiao Zhongbang and his wife. Not easy to deal with. Mo Lien sighed and looked up at the bright sky. Swoosh. His figure immediately vanished. After returning to the inn, Yang Shirong patted her little niece's head and said with a smile, "Do you want to go into seclusion? From what I see, you should stabilize your cultivation level first." Arbor opened her small mouth and was about to speak when Prince Mo entered through the window. Without saying a word, he rushed out of the window with his little wife in his arms. Yang Shirong looked at the window in confusion. Was she hallucinating just now? Mo Lien, that bastard, was like a fucking robber. He just grabbed his wife and ran away. What kind of crown prince was this unreliable guy? It's him. Forget it. On the other side, Yang Shirong was secretly ridiculing Mo Lien's actions. On the other side, Mo Lien, who was hugging his little wife, couldn't help but sigh in relief. Wife. What? Arbor glared at the man in annoyance. Second Martial Uncle is talking to me. We have to pack up and go to the Divine Land. Time is of the essence. We have to leave now. Arbor's two black eyes widened in an instant. But husband, didn't you just say that you have to wait until Dun Zhong has completely mastered the affairs of Shantian Prefecture and wipe out the remaining forces? Whoever wants to do that can do it. His wife is still the most important. His wife is about to run away because of second martial uncle's instigation. How can he not be anxious? Take out your little boat. Let's not bother about second martial uncle. Let's go. Why did this normal couple make it seem like they were eloping? Arbor felt a little incredulous. Run away without second martial uncle's knowledge. Chapter 2198. Are you sure you won't be beaten to death by second Uncle Master? You. Why do you care so much? Mo Lien hugged his little wife and said anxiously, there's no time like the present. Let's set off today. Wei, you're so quick-witted. It's too hilarious. Xiao Mook gazed at her dear hubby speechlessly. Hubby. She looked at him seriously and raised her hands to pull his neck down. No matter what second Uncle Master says, we're still husband and wife. Why are you in such a hurry? When young Shirong came over, she happened to hear this. She was so angry that her teeth ached. Although Mo Lien, that punk, was pretty good in all aspects. But in young Shirong's eyes, this guy was just someone to make do with. Humph. If her martial niece didn't like him, no matter how many Mo Liens were stacked together, he wouldn't be good enough for her Chiao. Sensing that second Uncle Master was looking down on him, Mo Lien cautiously leaned toward Arbor and looked at second Uncle Master warily. Jojo, your second Uncle Master doesn't like me again. Arbor nodded her little head. You're beautiful. She doesn't think you're that reliable. Mo Lien. What kind of weird reason was that? Young Shirong looked at the couple exasperatedly and asked with her hands behind her back, tell me the truth. Are you really planning to go to China? The young couple nodded in unison. I'm not asking you. Young Shirong rebuked Prince Mo angrily. It was all because of this guy's instigation. Otherwise, her Chiao wouldn't have thought of going to China. What was so good about China? She was unfamiliar with the place and people. Moreover, her Chiao was just a little kid. Wasn't it a little unreasonable to venture into China alone? It felt like it was too early. She should at least raise her realm and become a level 10 great spiritual master. Only then would she feel assured. Arbor looked at her Uncle Master's worried gaze and said expressionlessly, second Uncle Master, don't worry. I'll take you with me. Second Uncle Master was speechless. Let's go to the Divine Land and find a good place for our sect to rebuild. Young Shirong's eyes brightened. We'll inflict heavy losses on the Holy Water sect in the Divine Province. Why did it sound so tempting? Arbor nodded. Find a divine realm. Build it there. The corners of second uncle's mouth twitched when he heard this. Jojo, I heard that there are only a few god realms in the entire upper 3 continents. Moreover, the good god territories have basically been taken over by some major forces. Occupied. Arbor blinked and turned to look at Mo Lien. Husband. Don't worry, just snatch it. Young Shirong silently rolled her eyes. She snorted and glanced at the kid. You make it sound so simple. One of the divine realms is under your father's name, right? Really? Mo Lien was stunned for a moment before she nodded and said, then let him give us the realm of the gods as a wedding gift. Arbor nodded, agreeing with Prince Mo's words. Young Shirong's mouth twitched. She looked at Prince Mo and then at their Chiao. She suddenly understood. Why were the two of them so compatible? So it was called the same black-hearted. How could the two of you be so greedy and make it sound like there was no suspense? Just like that divine realm was already in the bag for the two of them. The great emperor of the divine land must have had 8 lifetimes of bad luck to have such a deceitful son. Young Shirong rolled her eyes. When are we going? Chapter 2199. In a few days. Immediately. Arbor and Mo Lien gave different answers at the same time. Young Shirong glared at Mo Lien in exasperation. What do you mean immediately? We have to prepare for China. What do we have to prepare? Aren't the things in our inner world? Scram. Second Uncle Master roared like a lion. Mo Lien looked pitifully at his chow. Second Uncle Master roared at me. Arbor quickly patted his hand. That's how Second Uncle Master is like. You'll get used to it. Young Shirong felt that this did not sound like a compliment. She glanced at the couple and continued, Jojo, don't be anxious. It's always good to prepare more. Who knows what you'll face when you go to China? Before Young Shirong could finish, Mo Lien waved at her. Second Uncle Master, don't worry. I'll take care of everything. You're the one who's worrying. Young Shirong snorted. This Mo fellow could even snatch her chiao and run away at the inn. Who knew what he would do in the future? Sigh, the child was all grown up. It was really worrying. Young Shirong sighed and followed the two of them with her hands behind her back. The next day. Arbor and Mo Lien slept until late in the morning before they got up. After the two of them finished washing up and were about to go downstairs for lunch, the shopkeeper ran upstairs and respectfully handed the two of them an invitation. Mo Lien reached out to take it. After turning it over and over to examine it, his lips involuntarily curled into a sneer. Who sent the invitation? Who else could it be? Mo Lien pulled Arbor's hand and walked downstairs. The one from the Wang family of Jian Pain. Mo Kuan. Prince Mo nodded. What did he send the invitation for? Mo Lien's face was full of mockery. She flipped the invitation over and over again. Then, she raised a red flame and burned it to ashes. That person from the Wang family of Jian Pain said that he was rude to me last time and wanted to use the banquet as an excuse to apologize to me. Oh. Arbor didn't say anything. Mo Lien looked down at her in amusement. What do you think? Do I have to go? Arbor snorted. What good can there be in those foppish gatherings? Isn't it just singing and dancing and finding some scantily clad women to accompany them? Mo Lien's eyes lit up. She turned the little guy around to face her. Jojo, are you jealous? Bah. Why would she be jealous? Miss Chow snorted stubbornly and glanced at Prince Mo. Are you still going? The Crown Prince immediately shook his head. No, no, no. Miss Chow's little face was no longer so tense. Mo Lien held her little hand and walked down the stairs. Immediately, she saw Second Uncle Master sitting by the window and looking at her with a ladylike face. She hurriedly pulled Arbor over. Second Uncle Master. Prince Mo bowed respectfully to Yang Shirong. Yang Shirong, who had wanted to rebuke this fellow, was suddenly speechless. This brat always acted obedient in front of Jojo. That face of his really made her unable to get angry. Jojo, if we want to go through the passage in China, we'll have to wait for at least 4 months. No need. Arbor shook her head. I have my own ways to get there. You don't have to worry about this. As she spoke, the wind chimes at the door rang. A dozen or so women with slender waists walked in from outside, walking towards Crown Prince Mo with a clear goal in mind. Chapter 2200. Mo Lien's eyelids twitched as a bad premonition flashed across his heart. Sure enough, the dozen or so women were walking towards him. They lined up in a row and bowed to Prince Mo. They said in unison, "Your concubines greet your highness the crown prince." Young Shirong was so angry that her face turned green. She slapped the table so hard that a corner of the table fell to the ground. Who are these people? This stinking brat. My impression of him had changed a little, but I didn't expect him to be this kind of person. Young Shirong's face was saying, "You're not satisfied with my chow, and you're making so many women." Her expression. If that gaze could be turned into a solid blade, it would probably be able to stab Prince Mo twice. Mo Lian's face darkened as he suppressed his anger. He glanced at the women. "Who are you?" "We are here on the orders of the Crown Prince of Giant Pain to bring your highness the Crown Prince to the residence for a gathering." "Mo Lian, Crown Prince of Giant Pain, do you want to die?" "Arbor, Crown Prince of Giant Pain, you're really tired of living." Young Shirong slammed the table and pulled Arbor away. "Jojo, why are you still staying here? Haven't you bullied us enough?" "Second Uncle Master." Mo Lian hurriedly stood up and pulled his chow to his side. "I don't know these people. Just tell them to scram." Arbor glanced at the dozen women with heavy makeup. "You're the Crown Prince of Giant Pain's Crown Prince's dancers?" The women shook their heads. Young Shirong's expression softened a little. Who the hell knew who the Crown Prince of Giant Pain was? But since they weren't the Crown Prince of Giant Pain's dancers, they might just be ordinary maids who were dressed a little flirtatiously. Unexpectedly, the leader of the dancers looked shyly at Mo Lian. "We're the Crown Prince's people." "The Crown Prince?" "Arbor, where did this bunch of idiots come from? How dare they pretend to be the Crown Prince's people?" "The Crown Prince has already given us to your highness. I hope your highness won't despise us for being clumsy." Young Shirong flipped over the table in front of her at once and pulled Xiao Mu away without another word. The Crown Prince hurriedly stood up with a dumbfounded expression and chased after the two of them. Young Shirong pulled Arbor and ran at lightning speed. In a flash, they were already far away from the inn. Arbor couldn't help but sigh. He tugged at Young Shirong's hand and said, "Second martial aunt." Young Shirong turned to look at her and said seriously, "Child, have you thought it through? When you go to the Divine Land, if you go there as the Crown Princess, there will be many troubles and dangers." Arbor nodded, "I know, second martial uncle." Young Shirong looked at her again and said unhappily, "Child, with your qualifications, you can easily find 8 or 10 Mo Lian, let alone one. Look at this kid, he's not that good." Young Shirong continued to ridicule, "He's surrounded by a flock of women. Who knows when someone will shove someone to his side. It's fine. The house is big and we need many servants," Arbor said mildly. Second martial aunt's eyes widened. "You?" Had he already thought of a way out for the dozen or so kabuki girls? "Sweeping, mopping, tidying the courtyard, there will be many officials in the Crown Prince's residence in the future. There will be places for these people to work." "That's right." Chapter 2201. Prince Mo, who had hurried over, heaved a sigh of relief when he heard this. He was afraid that Jojo would misunderstand him. Unexpectedly, the little guy trusted him so much. This made him very happy from the bottom of his heart. "Have those people been arranged?" Arbor glanced sideways at Prince Mo and asked with a snort. "Yes, I've asked the butler to assign them. Let them do some cleaning work in the future. That shouldn't be a problem, right?" Arbor was very satisfied. On the other hand, Young Shirong's tense face finally relaxed a little. "You really sent them to do the cleaning?" Mo Lian nodded and looked at Young Shirong seriously. "Second Uncle Master, don't worry. They're only fit to do the cleaning work. I'm afraid they won't be able to do the more delicate work. Young Shirong was speechless. Sure enough, this Mo Lien was a guy who dug endless pits. But then again, her family's Jojo seemed to have said before that he would send those dancers to do the cleaning work. That the two of them did not speak at all, but in the end, they used the same method to deal with those dancers. It was obvious that the two of them were at the same level of swindling. Young Shirong didn't know if she should feel comforted or pity for those dancers. Second Uncle Master, don't worry. Arbor said softly to Yang Shirong. Lien has never done anything to hurt me in all these days. Yang Shirong looked at Mo Lien and her expression softened a little. Mo Lien hurriedly struck while the iron was hot and continued, Second Uncle Master, don't worry. I won't do anything that will harm Jojo. Yang Shirong looked at him from head to toe and snorted, your status is there for all to see. When we return to China, Jojo said that there won't be any trouble, but I don't believe him. There will be trouble. Mo Lien said with a very good attitude. But I'll solve it for Jojo. As long as I'm here, Jojo won't have to face any trouble alone. Young Shirong nodded her head in acknowledgement of him. Speaking of which, the Crown Prince was really evil. Young Shirong thought to herself. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes and witnessed the way he handled things, she really wouldn't have known that under this kid's gentle appearance, there was actually a thick black heart. Arbor reached out and grabbed Prince Mo's hand. The Crown Prince of Giant Pain has repeatedly urged you to come. Do you still want to go? Go, why wouldn't I? Mo Lien's lips curled into a cold smile. Mo Kun, that brat, had nearly caused his second martial uncle's impression of him to drop below the freezing point. Damn it, second martial uncle already didn't like him enough. Now, it was almost worse. This made Prince Mo extremely unhappy. Prince Mo, who originally didn't plan to attend this banquet, suddenly decided to go. If he didn't go, how could he kill Mo Kun openly? Arbor looked at his expression and looked up to ask, you've decided to go? Mo Lien nodded and reached out to hold her delicate wrist. Let's go together. Miss Chiao pursed her lips. They didn't invite me. That invitation clearly stated that it was for Mo Lien to go alone. Mo Lien raised his hand with a smile and planted a kiss on the back of her hand. Emichim. Come with me. You're my wife. If you don't go, I won't go either. Inviting me is inviting you, Mo Lien said softly. We're one. Chapter 2202. Arbor cast a glance at him. You don't mind that I'm in your way? Mo Lien was taken aback, but then he smiled and hugged her tightly, gently lifting her up so that she was at eye level with him. My Jojo, you're jealous. Pooh. Arbor suddenly thought of something. When he turned around and saw Second Uncle Master's feminine face, he immediately exclaimed, Second Uncle Master is beside us. This stinking brat's nonchalant manner was too detestable. Young Shirong snorted and waved her hand. I can't be bothered with you guys. Make preparations earlier if you're going to China. Don't leave out a single thing that you should prepare. Going to China isn't the same as staying at home. Don't procrastinate and do things that make me uneasy. Procrastinate. Uneasy. Was Second Uncle Master talking about things like kissing and hugging? Mo Lien and the little fellow's beady black eyes met, and he couldn't resist chuckling. He hugged her and gave her a kiss. My Jojo, don't worry. Even if your Uncle Master wants to break up an affectionate couple, it won't work. If she doesn't let me see you, I'll definitely come see you even if I have to climb through the window and dig a tunnel. Thanks. Arbor rolled his eyes at him. That adorable expression tickled Mo Lien. Let's go. I'll dress you up when we return to the room. We'll go meet that fool in a bit. The vassal prince of Giant Pain had been pacing back and forth in the study since early in the morning. At this time, there were two other people sitting in his study. The two of them looked like a pair of twins. They were about 40 years old, and their appearances carried a hint of sharpness and harshness. "Vassal Prince, there's no need to be so anxious." One of them couldn't resist shaking his head and saying, "You don't know, but that guy is especially formidable." Mo Kun couldn't help but shudder in fear when he recalled the scene that day. The people around Mo Lien didn't look like ordinary people. The moment they made a move, it was obvious that a few minor mystic cultivators absolutely couldn't deal with them. Chi, the twin on the left, couldn't help but sneer. "That crown prince has been growing up on Seikong planet in the lower realm for several decades. Even if that group of people from the Council of Elders went over to impart their experience, you should also know that in a lower realm place like Seikong planet, the spiritual energy is very thin, and even mystic energy is rarely seen. I've also heard that spirit masters are extremely precious in the lower realms." Another man smiled and said, "Even if that person started cultivating in his mother's womb, he might not be able to break through to the spirit realm, right?" When Mo Kun heard this, he didn't show much joy. Instead, he said very nervously, "Then you don't understand the Crown Prince at all. The Crown Prince is definitely not as simple as you think." "Your Highness, Your Highness." A man who looked like a manservant quickly walked in and bowed in greeting. Mo Kun's face lit up. "Did His Highness the Crown Prince accept the beauties I gave him?" The manservant looked at Mo Kun awkwardly, nodded and then shook his head. "What do you mean by nodding and shaking your head?" "Your Highness, then. The Crown Prince did accept the beauties you gave him." Mo Kun slapped his thigh and said joyfully, "Then isn't that great? Why are you still shaking your head, punk?" "I knew it. This Mo Lien was merely putting on an act. Didn't he still accept my beauties?" The manservant said with a sullen face. This lowly one heard that the beauties we sent over were all sent to be cleaning maids by Prince Mo's men. "You still think that you used the honey trap correctly?" Chapter 2203. Mo Kun widened his eyes in shock. "Are you telling the truth? Mo Lien, that brat, really sent all the beauties he sent over to sweep the streets? He actually dared to do such a thing?" Mo Kun was so angry that his gums hurt. His eyes were dark and gloomy as he stared at the page boy like a venomous snake. The page boy hurriedly crawled on the ground and kowtowed. This is the news I heard. I still have to ask around for the details." "Then why aren't you going?" Mo Kun roared. "Go take a look. Where did he send them to sweep the streets? These were all beauties that were 1 in 1,000. How could he bear to send them away?" Mo Kun's heart ached terribly. If he had known that the page boy was so unappreciative, he wouldn't have sent them over. Now, he didn't even know if he could get them back. The page boy was so frightened that he rolled and crawled out of the door. By the time he crawled out of the door, he was already drenched in cold sweat. Recalling Lord Vassal Prince's instructions, he hurriedly ran to ask around. One of the twins, who were in their 40s, sneered. "This person really knows how to waste God's gifts. Lord Vassal Prince, why must we rush over to make our presence known in front of him? Let's not talk about whether this person can return to the divine continent. Even if he can, there's still eldest young master and second young master." The twin laughed sinisterly. "Can't we just follow behind and watch the show?" Mo Kun rolled his eyes. His voice was somewhat indignant. "Previously, I was so frightened by him that I lost my composure. Now that I've regained my senses, I won't show such cowardice." "Humph, he's just a crown prince who hasn't been acknowledged yet." Lord Vassal Prince sneered. "When he returns to the divine continent, he'll get it." Then why did Lord Vassal Prince invite him to a banquet this time? Mo Kun gritted his teeth. Originally, I wanted to connect with him, but now I think that he's an unappreciative person. Isn't that so? The middle-aged man chuckled. Our old vassal prince is someone who has the right to speak in front of the emperor. TSK, someone like him dares to look down on you. Mo Kun raised his hand and stopped the middle-aged man from continuing to flatter him. He asked with a solemn face, "Where's Ah Biao? Where the hell did he go?" My reply just now was completely brainless. Is the crown prince coming or not? Not long after, the manservant who had left hurriedly ran back and bowed in front of Mo Kun. Mo Kun waved his hand impatiently and asked, "How is it? Where did he throw those beauties to? And tonight's banquet, is he coming or not?" If this fellow really didn't give Mo Kun any face, then humph. When he returned, he would immediately report to his father and ask his father, the king of Giant Pain, to come forward and complain about this fellow to the great emperor. When the manservant Ah Biao heard this, he hurriedly knelt down with a plop and said in a trembling voice, reporting to Lord Heir. His Highness the Crown Prince, he. What about him? Tell me. His Highness the Crown Prince ordered a steward to keep those beauties in the guest house where they're staying, to wipe the floor, wipe the stools, and pour the night incense. Smack. Mo Kun, who was burning with rage, smashed the cup in his hand. Say that again. The manservant. Woo, this wasn't something that this lowly one arranged. Chapter 2204. If you keep getting angry at this lowly one, will that accomplish anything? Wouldn't that be of no avail? The page boy criticized him incessantly in his heart, but he didn't dare to show it on his face. He could only smile obsequiously and say, "The beauties have all been left at the inn." Mo Kun immediately jumped up from his seat and smashed basically everything that could be smashed in the living room. He then exclaimed in exasperation, "This punk actually doesn't give me any face. The beauties that he sent over. Never mind that he didn't accept them, but he still brought them back. Not only did he not freaking return them, but he even arranged for them to go to the inn to pour night incense and whatnot. Only this Mo fellow could do such a thing. Oh wait, that's not right. This Mo Lien fellow could do such a thing." Mo Kun was burning with rage. He paced back and forth in the living room, stepping on the porcelain shards beneath his feet. Crunching sounds could be heard as he stepped on them. Lord Vassal Prince. Scram. Yes, this lowly one will scram right away. As if he had been pardoned, Ah Biao frantically ran out without a care in the world. Come back. Mo Kun roared angrily. Ah Biao turned around as if he had lost a parent and bowed to Mo Kun, asking, "Lord Vassal Prince, do you have any other instructions? This Mo fellow doesn't give this young master any face at all. Go and bring everyone back from the inn." He wasn't freaking sending them off anymore. Was this how these beautiful young ladies tormented him? He, Mo Kun, had painfully parted with them to let that punk enjoy them, but in the end... Smack, he was slapped in the face. Mo Kun paced back and forth in the living room with his hands behind his back. That with a long face, Ah Biao timidly asked Mo Kun, "Lord Vassal Prince, are you sure you want to do this? If the people who were sent out were to bring them back, if this matter were to spread to the divine province, it was guaranteed to become the biggest joke in the upper-class circle." As a subordinate, he was completely thinking of Lord Vassal Prince's face. If he did this and Lord Vassal Prince was mocked in the end, the first unlucky one would definitely be him. Lord Vassal Prince definitely wouldn't say that he made the wrong decision back then. Then the one at fault would definitely be him, Ah Biao. Go. Yes, yes, yes. Ah, Biao bitterly turned around and was about to leave. The immortal-like couple walking towards him scared him so much that his legs went soft, and he knelt down on the spot. Your Highness the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince cast a sidelong glance at him. Haven't you seen my Crown Princess? Greetings, Crown Princess. May the Crown Princess have good fortune and peace. Abayo immediately lowered his head. He had a strong desire to live and lay down. Wasn't the Crown Prince's aura a little too strong? Prince Mo grunted. Holding Arbor's little hand, he stepped on the broken porcelain pieces on the ground and walked in front of Mo Kun with a faint smile. What's wrong? A floor full of fragments to welcome me. Mo Kun shrunk his neck inexplicably and slowly moved closer to the twin bodyguards. Greetings, cousin-in-law. Mo Lien looked at him coldly. Mo Kun was speechless. How strange. Suddenly, he felt as if the entire hall was covered in ice. The air was so cold. So cold. Mo Kun took another step back and smiled inexplicably. Cousin-in-law, you're here so early. This younger brother didn't come out to greet you. Mo Lien glanced at him. There wasn't a hint of a smile in her eyes. When I walked to the door just now, I heard you say something about returning something to you. Chapter 2205. You tell him. Mo Lien glanced at the page boy, Biao, who was kneeling on the ground. What do you want to return to your lord heir? Biao's forehead was drenched in cold sweat. Hey, my uncles, hey. I'm just a page boy. Why did this fire inexplicably come to me? Biao didn't dare to answer casually. He lowered his head and said in a low voice, replying, Your Highness, the Lord Heir didn't say anything. Mo Kun, why don't you tell him? Mo Lien turned around and looked coldly at this younger cousin of hers. It was said that the king of Jianping was his father's favorite youngest brother. In the imperial capital, the king of Jianping's status was second only to his father. Therefore, these sons of his were considered to be very precious and favored by the heavens. The king of Jianping's heir was ranked third and was the legitimate son of the king of Jianping's family. He even had 2 concubine-born brothers above him and seemed to be quite capable. This was the information that Mo Lien had received for the time being. In the end, Mo Lien didn't need to care about these people at all. His status was there. As long as he returned to the divine continent, all the princes and princesses would have to give way to him. The king of Jianping's heir only wanted to go home and find his father. He took a step back in fear and instantly regretted his careless words just now. It was just a few beauties. If he gave them to his cousin, the crown prince, he could do whatever he wanted with them. For the sake of these beauties, he had to go against the crown prince. This was not a wise move. Mo Kun didn't know that in Arbor's eyes, his current appearance was instant cowardice. The crown prince actually had such a cowardly brother. Arbor immediately glanced at her husband with disdain and rubbed her little hand hard against his palm, wanting to pull it out. The crown prince, every time he saw his younger cousin, he freaking felt vexed. Jojo didn't seem to like his cowardly cousin. Not only that, he seemed to despise him every time because his cousin was too cowardly. Prince Mo, who felt very wronged, became angrier the more he looked at his cousin. The king of Jianping was a hero of his generation. How did he raise such a coward? Your Highness the Crown Prince. One of the twins suddenly spoke and cupped his hands towards Prince Mo. Prince Mo glanced at him coldly, his gaze landing on him. Who are you? I am Lao Hai, the personal bodyguard of the Crown Prince of Jianping Palace. This is my younger brother, Lao Jiang. The middle-aged man called Lao Hai said faintly, I have a few words, but I don't know if I should say them. What status do you have to speak to me? Prince Mo's eyes flashed with a cold light. It was so dark that people couldn't help but feel frightened. Lao Hai's face darkened slightly as he suddenly took a step forward. Qiao Mu only felt a gust of air slanting toward her. He is indeed a bold person. Mo Lian raised his hand and pulled her into his embrace. With a flick of his sleeve, he completely waved away the spiritual energy that Lao Hai released. At the same time, a cold light flashed in his eyes and a fire arrow shot out from his sleeve. With lightning speed, it shot towards Lao Hai's face. Lao Hai was shocked. He didn't expect the Crown Prince's speed to be so fast. It was already too late for him to dodge. As he rolled on the ground, his left arm was already pierced through by the fire arrow. That speed was so fast that it was almost impossible to see with the naked eye. Lao Hai wanted to react, but it was already too late. He opened his mouth and cried out. Chapter 2206. Bang! Lao Hai was instantly sent flying, tumbling to the ground. With a pu sound, he spat out a large amount of blood. Eldest brother. Lao Jiang was shocked. He quickly went forward to help him up, but unexpectedly, he heard Lao Hai's cry of alarm. Second brother, be careful. Eldest brother. The two brothers were simultaneously sent flying by the two palm force winds. Following the force, they rolled out without any ability to resist. One heavily crashed into the cabinet at the side, while the other was fiercely flung against the wall. The one who crashed into the cabinet had the cabinet fall down, smashing into his lower back. The one on the wall was even more miserable. His entire head went through the wall, and he was stuck on the wall, unable to get down for the time being. With the Crown Prince's attack, the entire hall fell silent. The Crown Prince of the King of Giant Pain staggered back a dozen steps, hiding behind the armchair. He looked at the Crown Prince with a somewhat frightened expression, and said with a trembling voice, cousin, let's talk things out. He was just saying that Mo Lian, this punk, had astonishing combat prowess. This Lao Hai and Lao Jiang didn't even know Crown Prince Mo's background, yet they dared to rush up and spout nonsense. They really weren't too smart. Looking at the two bodyguards beside him who could be considered presentable, then thinking about the two attendants beside his eldest brother and second brother, Mo Kuan couldn't help but feel a little stifled. Although he was the legitimate son of the King of Giant Pain and had successfully inherited the title of Crown Prince according to the ancestral rules passed down by the old ancestors, his father still loved his eldest brother, who was proficient in both the pen and the sword, the most. Even the attendant beside his eldest brother was an expert whose cultivation was close to the god realm. As for the two people beside him, Lao Hai and Lao Jiang were only 10th level great spiritual masters. In the middle 6 prefectures and the lower star domain, they were definitely presentable. However, in places like the upper 3 prefectures, it was hard to explain. Wait a minute. Mo Kuan seemed to have thought of something. He frowned and racked his brains for a while. Suddenly, his expression changed as he looked at Prince Mo. This cousin of his took care of 2 10th level great spiritual masters within a few breaths of time with a wave of his hand. Then his realm, what was it? Mo Kuan couldn't help but feel a little scared. He hugged the armchair and took a few steps back. Don't come over. He shouted at Mo Lian, cousin. We're from the same sect, we share the same surname. You can't be so ruthless to me. My father, he is your uncle. Mo Kuan. Ah, yes. Mo Kuan hurriedly nodded in response. However, he hugged the armchair and took a few steps back. When Arbor saw his cowardly appearance, he looked down on the Mo family even more. She anxiously tried to pull her little hand out of Mo Lien's palm, but to no avail. Mo Lien! Exclamation point. Because of this crazy Mo Kun, not only was he misunderstood by second martial uncle, he even caused Jojo to look down on the Mo family. Cousin, I'm telling you, if there's anything between us, let's talk about it calmly. Then, those beauties that I gave you, you can do whatever you want with them, it's fine. You can leave them in the inn to sweep the floor or pour the night incense, I won't care. What can you do? Arbor snorted rudely. He raised his little hand and shouted, what are you still standing there for? Send a gift in return. Mo Kun's eyes immediately widened. His nerves were strangely tense. What? There was a gift in return. Chapter 2207. Mo Kun, what's with this ominous feeling? As soon as Xiao Mu mentioned returning a gift or something, his nerves immediately tensed up. No need. Mo Kun hurriedly said. Little cousin-in-law, actually, you don't have to return the gift. Arbor coldly swept a glance at him. Bring it over. What are you doing? Stop it. Mo Kun widened his eyes and instinctively retreated a few steps while hugging his armchair. He stared warily at Arbor and hurriedly signaled the two guards with his eyes. Unfortunately, Lao Jiang had just helped his older brother, who had vomited blood, up from the ground. The two of them looked pale as they supported each other. They were afraid of being beaten up by Prince Mo and didn't dare to step forward for the time being. A string of familiar groans traveled in from outside the door. Mo Kun hugged his armchair and hid behind the table. When his gaze landed on the door, his eyes immediately widened. He saw a group of burly men carrying 10 fat sows walk in from outside the door. They squealed as they squeezed through the door. Fortunately, the hall of Mo Kun's temporary residence was big enough. With over 20 people carrying 10 sows, it didn't feel crowded at all. The stewards and servants of the heir who heard the news were all stunned. They all looked at the legendary little crown princess as if they were looking at a murderous shark. The pitiful heir hugged his armchair and exclaimed, cousin-in-law, what are you trying to do? What are you trying to do? This fellow actually carried so many pigs over as a return gift. Mo Kun had the urge to cry. Could it be that this scary little cousin-in-law wanted him to eat all 10 of these pigs in one day? Arbor pinched his chubby hands and looked expressionlessly at the wailing Mo Kun. What are you all standing there for? Do it. The guards who followed the little crown princess in silently swallowed their saliva and hurriedly went forward to twist Mo Kun's arms, who couldn't stop struggling. With both of Mo Kun's arms held down, the armchair he was hugging naturally fell to the ground. He was on the verge of tears. She looked at Prince Mo with fear and trepidation, her eyes almost overflowing with tears. Cousin. You. Aren't you going to control your wife? What was she trying to do? Cousin. I am telling you, don't mess around. I can't eat so much pork. Me. Nonsense. Arbor scolded. Take him away. Mo Lien rubbed her forehead speechlessly and silently turned her face to the side. To be honest, he had no idea Jojo was up to something like this. It was no wonder that the little fellow had solemnly asked him to wait for a while when he left the house, saying that she wanted to prepare a return gift for Mo Kun. He thought it was a gift in return. His wife had actually prepared 10 sows for Mo Kun. This was really... only someone with her brain could think of such a thing. Jojo. Mo Lien called out to his little wife in a small voice. Arbor glanced at him and expressionlessly turned her little face away. Let's go. The guards escorted Mo-kun all the way to the dining area in the rear garden. The steward of the heir apparent followed behind with a long face. After chasing after the group for a while, he called out breathlessly, "Crown Princess, what are you trying to do?" Arbor saw an empty cow, sheep, and horse pen from afar. She waved her hand and said coldly, "Put them all in." Chapter 2208. The 20 or so strong men hurriedly walked forward, looked at each other, and hurriedly put the 10 sows in. "Where is he?" The corners of the guards' mouths twitched as they hurriedly escorted the wailing and struggling Mo-kun forward. They lowered their heads and bowed. "Crown Princess." The little Crown Princess was expressionless as she said with a cold face, "Why aren't you inviting Prince Giantpain in?" "Yes." One of the guards' mouths twitched as he forcefully held back his laughter. He said in an extremely calm voice, "Prince Giantpain, please." "What are you doing? What are you trying to do? What are you trying to do?" "Oh." Prince Giantpain let out extremely tragic cries. Prince Giantpain struggled with his 2 arms and hugged whatever he saw as he was dragged over while hugging the fence. Mo-lien. Arbor's small face was cold as he watched Prince Giantpain cling to the fence at the door with all his might. The guards were unable to escort him in. The little guy took a few steps forward and kicked him in the butt. Mo-lien. Bam! Prince Giantpain was so pitiful that he rolled forward and was forced to fall into the pigsty, biting into a piece of mud on the ground. His front teeth almost fell out, and 2 streams of tears suddenly flowed down. "Close the door." At Xiao Mu's command, several royal guards swiftly locked up the fence door. "Everyone, You can't do this." The steward pounced forward and lay down at Mo-lien's feet. That page boy Biao was also scared to death. He scrambled over with a pale face and kowtowed repeatedly to Mo-lien. "Your Highness the Crown Prince, Your Highness the Crown Prince, please spare my life." Mo-lien. "This prince didn't do anything." "What's with this? This prince is utterly devoid of conscience." expression. Arbor leaped up and stood on the fence door, coldly looking at Prince Giantpain, who was rolling around in the pigsty. With a wave of her hand, a faint fragrance of powder drifted into the pigsty. Arbor watched expressionlessly as the 10 sows suddenly became restless and madly chased after the Crown Prince of Giantpain. He turned his back in disgust and jumped down from the fence. "Guards! Fetch some buckets of water." "Reporting to Your Highness, reporting to the Crown Princess, the guests attending the banquet are here." "Oh." Mo-lien turned her head to look at the servant who reported, "Who are they?" "Shuntian Prefecture's Prefecture Lord, Six Sons Sect, Heavenly Fortune Sect, and other major sects, sect masters, elite disciples, and so on." Bring them over," Mo-lien said indifferently. "Bring it here." "No. Your Highness the Crown Prince." The steward wailed on the ground. "Why not? The masters are all here. Aren't you here for a banquet? Isn't a banquet supposed to have some entertainment?" Crown Prince Mo waved his hand impatiently. "What, Lu Su, have them all come over." Steward! Was it the trend to let the masters act as performers for this extra entertainment at banquets nowadays? "Yes." The servant accepted the order with an embarrassed expression. The others didn't even dare to utter a word. They all silently lowered their heads and stood solemnly at the 2 sides, hating that they had 2 ears to hear so much. At this moment, everyone hated that they couldn't just be a block of wood. His Highness the Crown Prince could even discipline the Crown Prince of Giantpain without any explanation, let alone these small fries. Who dared to be the bird that stuck its head out and provoke this fiendish couple? Chapter 2209. Ha ha ha. The sect master of the Six Sons sect, Qing Guang, walked over with a few Six Sons sect disciples. When he saw Prince Mo from afar, he hurriedly went forward to greet him. Your Highness, it's an honor to meet you. Prince Mo nodded at him indifferently. Sect Master Qing Guang's bald head was extremely dazzling under the setting sun. The middle-aged man who was a few steps away from him had an ordinary appearance, but his voice was loud and clear. I'm Wu Nyozi from the Heavenly Fortune sect. Greetings, Your Highness. Wu Jin followed behind his father with a complicated expression. He looked at Mo Lian and Arbor with a strange expression. These two people had left a deep impression on him in Liang Yuan medicine store. Those people from Hongyuan Island had suffered greatly in the hands of this couple. He would never forget Madame Zhang's strange expression before she died. So these two people were the Crown Prince and Crown Princess from the Divine Land. It was no wonder that people with such prominent identities were so ruthless and weren't afraid of causing trouble at all. Wu Jin also abruptly turned his head. Sure enough, he saw Zhang Wuxiang, who was standing half a step behind him, glaring furiously at Xiao Mu. Wu Jin was about to remind young Mistress Zhang when he saw the scene in the pigsty. His eyes widened, and the hair on his head almost exploded. Oh, Master Tian, the one who was locked in the pigsty and running around in circles, wasn't that the unlucky Prince of Giant Pain himself? Everyone's eyes couldn't help but twitch. The Crown Prince of the Giant Pain Wang family was so unlucky. At this moment, he was running back and forth in the inner circle like a madman, gasping for breath. The scariest thing was that there were 10 running pigs behind him. Everyone looked at each other in silence with a strange expression. They were all stunned. What was going on with the Crown Prince of Giant Pain? Mo Kuan ran until he was half dead. He only felt that the herd of pigs running behind him was very scary. He felt that if he dared to stop, he would probably be torn apart by the pigs in the next second. Your Highness, Your Highness. Qing Guang hastily walked forward and called out loudly. He looked on helplessly as the Crown Prince of Giant Pain ran past in front of him. The head of the Heavenly Fortune sect, Wu Nyozi, hurriedly turned around and hurriedly bowed towards Mo Lian. Your Highness, I don't know if there's some misunderstanding between the heir and myself. What are you doing? Prince Mo glanced at him indifferently. What do you know? The Crown Princess is giving you a gift in return. Mo Lian swept a glance at Wu Nyozi, who was making a fuss over nothing and hadn't seen the world. He couldn't help but sneer in his heart. Ah! Ah! The Crown Prince of Giant Pain was scared out of his wits by the herd of pigs. He leaped up, wanting to leap up. Unexpectedly, his body was just suspended in midair when he was struck down by a tyrannical air current. He almost slipped into the herd of pigs. He hastily used his 2 hands to cling onto the fence, hanging onto it. He shrieked, No, don't. Let me out. Little cousin-in-law, hurry and let me out. Cousin. Xiao Mu walked up a few steps and icily said with a stoic face, What? You don't like the gift I'm giving you in return? Who the hell would like this kind of gift? Mo Kuan was ravaged to the point of tears and snot overflowing. His hands clung onto the fence tightly, refusing to let go. He didn't want to talk about his image anymore. Chapter 2210. His entire body was hanging from the door, and his 2 legs couldn't help but curl upwards. At this moment, he could only feel the herd of pigs circling around his feet, as if he lowered his feet by half an inch, those pigs would gnaw on both his legs. It was too terrifying. Mo Kuan kept crying as he said, Let me out, little cousin-in-law. What did I do wrong for you to treat me like this? Let me out. Arbor couldn't help but be enraged when he heard that. You don't like my return gift? Mo-kun was just about to nod when he caught sight of Arbor's icy gaze. His heart trembled, and he hurriedly shook his head. I like it, I like it. Ah, no, no. It's me, little cousin-in-law. Wah. Mo-kun was in tears. His legs that were hanging from the door kept kicking upwards, and he was so scared that he pissed his pants, his face drained of color. Arbor glanced at him coldly and asked leisurely, Are you still going to give the Crown Prince a gift later? No, I won't. Mo-kun had already pissed his pants. Don't freaking talk about giving a gift. He wouldn't give anything. Would he still dare to give a gift? Didn't he just give His Highness the Crown Prince a bunch of flirtatious beauties? In the end, the Crown Princess gave him a bunch of old sows as a return gift. This gift was really unique. It was completely different from anyone else's return gift. Arbor nodded when he heard that. He glanced at a guard beside him and took out a thin piece of paper from his inner world. Sign it for him. That guard's mouth twitched, and he hurriedly took the pen and paper with both hands. He turned and walked quickly to Mo-kun, who was still clinging to the door. He handed the pen and paper to Mo-kun. Mo-kun wasn't in the mood to read at this moment. He hurriedly reached out to sign it after receiving it, and he cried out tearfully, Little cousin-in-law, Crown Princess, hurry and let me go Crown Princess. He had agreed to everything, signed the paper, and even apologized repeatedly. What was this devilish Crown Princess waiting for? Why didn't they let him go? Arbor reached out and took the thing he signed. After looking at it, he nodded and raised his hand to shake the thin piece of paper in his hand. Remember what you've signed. Xiao Mu stated coldly, in the future, if there are still people who want to gift this and that to the Crown Prince, this Crown Prince Consort guarantees that the return gift I will give you will definitely satisfy all of you and satisfy all of you. Everyone! Was the Crown Princess venting her anger on the Crown Prince of Giant Pain? Arbor then turned around and stomped back to Mo-lien's side. Mo-lien smiled and reached out to hold her little hand. She turned around and led her out. Are you happy now, Jojo? If he did not let the little guy vent his anger, the one who would be in trouble would be him. Thank the heavens, thank the Crown Prince of Giant Pain. This time, the little fellow should be able to calm down. As expected, the expression on Miss Chiao's face eased a little, and she nodded reluctantly. Weakling, I don't even have the desire to teach him a lesson. The Crown Prince, seeing the two of them walk out hand in hand, the steward and the others didn't dare to stop them. After the two of them walked a little further away, the steward hurriedly called Ah Biao to come forward and rescue his master from the gate with tears in his eyes. At this moment, the Crown Prince of Giant Pain was already paralyzed on the ground. His legs were trembling non-stop, and he even wet his pants from fright. Classmate Dun Zong, who had been watching the show the entire time, was speechless. The little girl was indeed incomparably ferocious. Seeing how she scared the Crown Prince of Giant Pain into a dog, as a bystander, he felt a little satisfied. I'm going to sleep, and everything will return to normal tomorrow. Chapter 22:11. Dunju pretended to show concern. How are you feeling? Crown Prince Giant Pain. Cough, if you're not feeling well, don't force yourself. Quickly help the Crown Prince back to his room. Ah. Sect Master Qing Guang of Six Suns Sect turned back to look at the Crown Prince's back with a complicated expression. This Crown Prince actually did such a thing to his own cousin in front of so many family heads. He didn't give them any face at all. It was obvious that he wasn't someone who was easy to get along with. However, it made sense. The Crown Prince of the Divine Province was there. Crown Prince Giant Pain must have had nothing better to do to go against him. In the end, not only did he almost lose his life, he also lost all his face in front of everyone. All the family heads stood there awkwardly. They didn't know if they should escape immediately or continue to be a part of the background. Dunju still went forward and reached out with a smile to help the embarrassed Crown Prince Giant Pain up. Crown Prince Giant Pain, are you alright? Do I look like I'm alright? Crown Prince Giant Pain suddenly roared. He was in a crazy state now, and he didn't even care about Dunju and the others. He just wanted to shout out all the anger in his chest. The volume of his voice was so loud that it scared the surrounding family heads, and they all frowned and took a few steps back. Crown Prince Giant Pain supported his manservant, Ah Biao, and stood up shakily. He felt that his legs were still trembling uncontrollably. Mo Kun shouted sternly, Mo Lien, Arbor, I won't let you off. This matter couldn't end like this. Mo Lien, that fellow, condoned his wife to treat him like this. He must report him to royal father. Damn Mo Lien, damn Arbor, this black-hearted couple. He definitely wouldn't let them off. Crown Prince Giant Pain. Ah Biao said with a mournful face. His Highness the Crown Prince isn't easy to deal with. Let's return to the Divine Province first. The Crown Prince of Giant Pain retracted his hand and gave him a slap. He shrieked in exasperation, shut up. Ah Biao covered his face and took a few steps back in fear. The Crown Prince of Giant Pain pointed at the sky and cursed, you will pay the price for this. Oh, what's the price? A cold voice came from outside the crowd. Mo Kun simply didn't expect that Mo Lien and Xiao Mu, this black-hearted pair, would actually return and appear before them again at this time. Mo Kun was so scared that he pissed his pants on the spot. He quickly pushed the butler and Ah Biao in front of him as a shield. He shrunk behind the butler and Ah Biao, only popping out half of his head as he screamed, You guys, what else do you want? I'm warning you, don't do anything stupid. Don't act recklessly. Mo Kun raised his voice and let out a series of dying duck cries. Arbor walked up to Mo Kun expressionlessly and hooked his little finger at him. What are you doing? Mo Kun's nerves tensed up. He hugged the butler's waist tightly and refused to let go. The old housekeeper's face turned a little green. His waist was in pain from the Crown Prince's tight grip. Bring him here. At Xiao Mu's command, several royal guards immediately swarmed forward and pinned Mo Kun's hands behind his back without a care, escorting him to Xiao Mu. Mo Kun's eyes widened in horror. Which, what did you do to me? Chapter 22:12. From the moment he entered the pigsty just now, he already realized that he could not muster any spiritual energy in his body, much less leap up. Even escaping seemed so difficult. Mo Kun was too scared. At that moment, he only felt that he was so insignificant in this world, so weak that he was comparable to a tiny ant. It was as if the other party only needed to stomp on him and flatten him. Little cousin-in-law, I was wrong. I know that I was wrong. Don't make things difficult for me, alright? I will definitely not send beautiful women to cousin-in-law in the future. Mo Kun's tears streamed down his face as he looked at Arbor with a frightened expression. Whoever sent beautiful women to the Crown Prince would be a big idiot. What kind of Hedong lioness did the Crown Prince marry? Look, he only sent over a dozen beautiful women, and she could not even tolerate it. Shut up. Arbor angrily slapped him heavily on the shoulder. That lad immediately fell to the ground with a plop like a soft-footed prawn. Arbor forcefully grabbed one of his arms and pulled with all her might. Mo Kun screamed like a pig being slaughtered. He only felt that his entire arm was being pinched in someone's palm and was being held behind his back. It was extremely painful. "What are you screaming for?" Arbor impatiently slapped the back of his neck forcefully. "Shut up." Mo-kun's voice became softer, and he sobbed. He only wanted to go home and hug his father to cry properly. The crown prince's wife was too fierce. With this kind of personality, which man could stand it? "Break, break, 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 crown princess, break, 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 break," sob sob. Mo-kun only felt that his entire arm did not seem to belong to him anymore. The pain of being held behind his back kept surging in his heart. Arbor forcefully shook the arm that was holding Mo-kun. Gulp. A small box suddenly rolled out of Mo-kun's sleeve and landed on the ground. Arbor stretched out her leg and kicked the box, causing it to fly up and land in her hands. "Ah, this is... Crown Princess, you can't snatch mine." "Paw." Without another word, Arbor swept his sleeve across Mo-kun's face. Mo-kun's head fell to the ground with a thud. Arbor tossed the box in his hand and glanced at the person lying on the ground with disdain. "You can find trouble with me at any time. But it's best to be prepared for a short life." The little fellow threw the box into his inner world, snorted, and walked to the crown prince's side without looking back. Mo-lien helplessly reached out to hold her little hand. "What's in that box?" It turned out that the reason why the little fellow had dragged him back was because of this box in Mo-kun's sleeve. Cho-cho said this is a snow ginseng fruit seed. The little fellow cast a glance at Mo-lien, who was lying on the ground, then looked up at Mo-lien and said, "I'll plant it for you to eat." Mo-lien nodded. "Is it delicious?" "Yes." Miss Chow nodded her small head. "It's even more delicious than the winter fruit. If ordinary people eat it regularly, it can also prolong their life. When it's grandmother's birthday, we can go home and give it to her." "Okay." Mo-lien grinned and patted her little head. The young couple held hands and were really going to leave this time. Zhang Wuxiang, who was standing at the side, looked slightly agitated. Just as she was about to move, Wu Genie, who was paying close attention to her movements, reached out and pulled her back. Wu Genie also lowered his voice and asked Zhang Wuxiang, "What are you doing? This slut killed my mother. Shouldn't I kill her for revenge?" Chapter 22:13. Why don't you wait 2 more days until the people from Great Source Island arrive? Wu Genie frowned. "You'll only be humiliating yourself if you rush up now." Zhang Wuxiang recalled Arbor and Mo-lien's skills and couldn't help but feel a little discouraged. Although Wu Genie was a useless coward, he was still quite smart. What he said wasn't wrong. If she rushed out to settle the score with Arbor and his wife now, she definitely wouldn't be able to get anything out of it. Zhang Wuxiang stopped in her tracks indignantly. She glared hatefully at Arbor and his wife's backs as she reluctantly watched them leave. The crown prince of Giant Pain, who had been ravaged, once again lost all the strength in his body and collapsed on the ground. Biao hurriedly crawled forward and reached out to help him up. Prince. Prince. Return to the Divine Prefecture. Return to the Divine Prefecture immediately. Prince of Giant Pain was so angry that his lips trembled and his entire body trembled. He wanted to return to the Divine Prefecture immediately to find his biological father. He didn't want to continue staying in this damned place any longer. He wanted to find his father. He wanted to return to the Divine Prefecture. Biao nodded repeatedly. Yes, yes, yes. It's just that we have to wait 2 more days before we can leave through that special passage. Return immediately. Prince of Giant Pain screamed. The Heavenly Fortune sect master, Wu Nyozi, twitched his eyes and couldn't help but say, "Prince is tired. You'd better help him back to his room to rest." The Crown Prince of Giant Pain's eyes suddenly widened as if he wanted to eat someone. His gaze circled Wunyosi, Qingguang, and the others, and he shrieked, You, why are you all here?" His disgraceful appearance just now and when he was forced to kneel on the ground by the Crown Princess, they saw all of it. Only then did Prince of Giant Pain come back to his senses and realize that the patriarchs and elite disciples of Shantian Prefecture's aristocratic families were all gathered here. Qingguang hurriedly cupped his hands and smiled apologetically. "Prince, Qingguang will take his leave first. Farewell. Farewell." The patriarchs cupped their hands and bowed. Then, they hurriedly led their disciples out of the hall. The Crown Prince of Giant Pain's furious roar came from behind. "Who is it? Who brought them all here? Who is it?" Regardless of how hysterical the Crown Prince of Giant Pain was, Arbor and Mo Lien walked out of the residence hand in hand, heading towards the inn they were staying at. "Let's go buy a house." Arbor suddenly said, "I think we should stay here for a few more days. It's not convenient to do things in the inn." Mo Lien's eyes lit up. She grabbed Arbor's hand and pressed it against her chest. "Jojo, do you want to spend some time alone with me?" "You think too much." Arbor looked up at him and suddenly remembered what Fan Meng and Fan Yu had said that day. He tilted his head and thought for a while. Then, he flipped his hand and took out a pot of blooming ink-colored lotus from his inner world. "You can have it. I planted it myself," Arbor said expressionlessly. Mo Lien reached out and took the lotus from her. He hugged it in his arms and looked at it again and again. He held it lovingly. "Jojo, you're giving it to me?" Arbor nodded. "I planted it myself. There's only one of its kind in the world. Do you like it?" Mo Lien nodded vigorously. I like it. Of course I like it very much." Xiao Mu beckoned at him with her small hand, indicating for him to bend down. Mo Lien blinked and leaned closer to her. "What's wrong?" Chapter 22:14. Miss Qiao suddenly reached out her hands and circled them around his neck. She pulled him down and kissed him hard on the cheek. "Mo Lien, I like you." All right, the confession was over. The gift had been given and the confession was over. Miss Qiao felt that she had completed an important task and nodded at herself satisfactorily. She then released her hand and turned around to walk away in small steps, not caring about the dazed His Highness the Crown Prince. At this moment, the two of them had just exited Prince Giant Pain's residence. There were quite a lot of people on the bustling street. The little fellow's voice was quite loud. At this moment, the passers-by on the street were all looking at the two of them with strange gazes. Miss Qiao quickly squeezed into a small alley. She reached out a small fist and smashed it hard on her own head. Her brain was damaged. After the confession, she realized that she had actually made such an outlandish and bold action on a bustling street. It's over, it's all because this man was too alluring. She was so confused that she couldn't even think straight. Arbor reached out to cup her slightly hot little face and hesitated on the spot for a moment. Just as she was about to turn around and look for Mo Lien, she suddenly felt a strong gust of wind from behind her head, attacking the back of her neck with incomparable speed. Arbor's gaze turned cold. She quickly leaned to the side, her sleeves fluttering as she leaped onto the top of the wall with a whoosh. Her pair of cold eyes were suffused with a cold light as she stared coldly at the person below the wall. That person didn't manage to hit her in one strike and didn't say much to her. He directly took advantage of her and leaped up, aiming for her face. This speed. Arbor's heart slightly choked. She turned around and leaped, her long black hair gliding in a perfect arc in midair. After landing on the ground with a whoosh, Arbor rushed towards where Emolien was. However, two people quickly appeared in front of her and attacked her from the front and back, launching fierce attacks at her chest and back. The surging spiritual energy came straight at her. Just as the attack was about to land on her, Tong Jinjin's figure suddenly appeared beside Arbor. He crossed his arms to block the attack. Emolien, who had heard the news, immediately saw the strangers attacking Jojo. She narrowed her eyes and said angrily, "What are you doing?" When they saw him appear, they seemed to be slightly afraid and quickly exchanged glances with each other. Seeing that the group of people were about to retreat, Emolien rushed towards Jojo. He stretched out his arms but did not have time to catch his wife. Suddenly, he saw a large net being thrown down from the sky. Like catching a fish, it caught his Qiao in an instant. Without another word, it pulled her and quickly leaped up. A bird's cry came from the sky. Emolien's expression was furious. She raised her head and saw a huge strange bird dragging the net. It flapped its wings and flew up a few times before it completely disappeared. Little 7. Emolien shouted in exasperation. These people actually snatched away his wife right in front of his eyes. Emolien leaped onto the dragon's body. Taking Tong and the others, they quickly chased after the bird. After less than half an incense stick's time, the still air in the small alley once again rippled like water. The strange bird appeared in the air, and the net in its claws appeared. Qi Lianhai's expression was slightly gloomy as he appeared in the small alley again with his people. He beckoned with his hand and that strange bird dragging the net fell from the sky and landed in front of them. Qi Lianhai gazed coldly at Xiao Mu, who was inside the net, and gave her a sinister smile. It really wasn't easy to wait for you to be alone. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.